Tonight, we explore a feeling that nearly everyone knows. It's the sense that something is missing. That quiet restlessness that sits beneath the surface. Zen Buddhism has much to say about this restlessness. The old masters knew it well. They taught that this very feeling, this sense of something missing, is where the spiritual journey begins. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. Tonight, we will explore this feeling together. We will journey through stories and teachings that have guided seekers for centuries. We will discover what this restlessness is really asking of us and what becomes possible when we stop running from it. Perhaps it is right there, in the pause, that we may finally find peace. As we move through these teachings, let your body settle wherever it is resting. Let your breath find its own rhythm. There is nothing you need to figure out tonight. Simply listen and let these ancient stories carry you toward rest. Let's begin our journey together. There is a particular kind of ache that has nothing to do with physical pain. It lives somewhere in the center of us, quiet but persistent. We might feel it most in still moments, when the busyness falls away and we are left with ourselves. It is the sense that something essential is missing, even when we cannot say what. Most of us learn early to push this feeling away. We keep busy. We reach for the next thing. And sometimes the ache does ease, for a while. But it always returns, reminding us that something remains unsettled. Zen teaches us that this restlessness is not a mistake. It is not a sign that something has gone wrong with us. The Buddha himself spoke of this ache as the beginning of awakening. It is the soul's quiet recognition that our ordinary strategies for happiness are not quite reaching the place that needs to be reached. Something deeper in us is asking for attention. Buddhism shows us that when we stop running from this feeling, when we turn toward it with curiosity instead of fear, something begins to shift. The hollow place is not an enemy. It is a messenger. And if we can learn to listen to what it is asking, we may discover that it has been pointing us home all along. Let us explore a story that shows this truth. In a prosperous trading town beside a wide river, there lived a rice merchant named Saro. He had built his business over 20 years, starting with a single cart and a small amount of borrowed grain. Now he owned 3 large storehouses. He employed a dozen workers. Merchants from distant provinces knew his name and trusted his word. By any measure, Saro had succeeded. His home was comfortable and well furnished. His wife, Nara, was kind and capable. His 2 sons were growing strong and had begun learning the trade. The family ate well. They had money set aside for difficult times. When Saro walked through the market, people greeted him with respect. And yet, there were nights when Saro could not sleep. He would lie on his mat in the darkness, listening to the slow breathing of his wife beside him, and feel something pressing against his chest. Not pain exactly, more like an emptiness. A hollow space that all his success had not filled. He tried to ignore it at first. He was being foolish, he told himself. Ungrateful. So many people had less than he did. So many struggled just to feed their families. What right did he have to feel incomplete? But the feeling would not be argued away. It returned night after night, and sometimes during the day as well. He would be counting sacks of rice or negotiating with a supplier, and suddenly the hollow sensation would open up inside him, as if the ground beneath his life had developed a crack. He began to work harder, thinking that perhaps he was simply not busy enough. He expanded the business, taking on new contracts, opening trade with a town further down the river. The work filled his days and exhausted his body. But in the quiet moments, the emptiness remained. He tried other things. He bought his wife a beautiful silk robe, thinking that her happiness might cure his own restlessness. He arranged a feast for his workers, filling the storehouse with laughter and good food. He gave money to the temple and helped repair the bridge at the edge of town. Each act brought a small warmth, a moment of satisfaction. But the hollow place did not fill. One autumn evening, Saro was walking home late from the storehouse. The sun had set and the streets were nearly empty. A cool wind carried the smell of wood smoke and dying leaves. He walked slowly, in no hurry to arrive home, where the emptiness would be waiting for him. Near the edge of town, he noticed an old man sitting by the road. The man had a traveler's pack beside him and wore the simple clothes of someone who had been walking for many days. His hair was white, his face deeply lined, but his eyes were clear and calm. Something made Saro stop. Perhaps it was the stillness of the old man, the way he sat as if he had nowhere else to be. Perhaps it was simply the strangeness of seeing a stranger at this hour, in this quiet part of town. The old man looked up and smiled. It was a gentle smile, without expectation. Saro found himself speaking. "Are you traveling far?" "I have been traveling a long time," the old man said. "Tonight I rest here. Tomorrow, who knows?" Saro nodded. He should continue home. There was no reason to stand here talking with a stranger. But he did not move. "You look troubled," the old man observed. His voice was kind, without judgment. Saro was startled. He had not thought his inner state was visible. He kept his concerns private, as a man in his position should. But something about the old man's gaze made pretense seem pointless. "I am not sure what troubles me," Saro admitted. "My life is good. I have worked hard and been fortunate. There is nothing I lack that I can name. And yet..." He trailed off, unable to find words for the hollow place. The old man nodded slowly, as if this was not surprising. "You have filled your storehouse with rice. But there is another storehouse you have neglected. One that rice cannot fill." Saro frowned. "What do you mean?" "You have spent 20 years building something outside yourself. A business, a reputation, a comfortable life. These are not bad things. But while you were building, something inside was waiting. Something that cannot be satisfied by success or possessions or even the love of family." The old man paused and looked at Saro directly. "Tell me, when the emptiness comes, where do you look for relief?" Saro thought about this. "I work more. I try to help others. I keep busy. And does it work?" "For a little while. Then the feeling returns." The old man smiled gently. "Of course it returns. You are looking in the wrong place. You are trying to fill an inner emptiness with outer things. It is like trying to satisfy thirst by painting pictures of water. The painting may be beautiful, but it will never quench the thirst." Saro felt something stir in his chest. a recognition. The old man was speaking of something he had sensed but never clearly seen. "Where should I look then?" he asked. The old man was quiet for a long moment. The wind rustled the leaves of the trees overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. "The search itself is the beginning," the old man finally said. "You have been running from the emptiness, trying to fill it, trying to cover it over. What would happen if you stopped running? What would happen if you simply sat with it, as I am sitting here?" Saro did not understand, not fully, but the words settled into him like seeds falling into dark soil. "The emptiness you feel is not your enemy," the old man continued. "It is a messenger. It is trying to tell you something, but you cannot hear its message while you are so busy running away." He picked up his pack and rose slowly to his feet. "I will continue my journey in the morning. But you, merchant, your journey is just beginning. Not a journey of distance, a journey of attention, of listening, of having the courage to ask what the hollow place is really asking for." The old man bowed slightly and walked on, disappearing into the gathering darkness. Saro stood there for a long time after he had gone. The emptiness was still present in his chest, but it felt different now, less like a problem to be solved and more like a question waiting to be heard. That night, for the first time in months, Saro did not try to push the hollow feeling away. He lay in the darkness and simply felt it. He did not try to explain it or fix it, or fill it with plans for tomorrow. He just let it be there. And in that allowing, something began to shift. The emptiness did not disappear, but it softened. It no longer felt like an accusation or a failure. It felt more like a doorway, a beginning he had been resisting for years. In the days that followed, Saro continued his work. He still managed his storehouses and negotiated with suppliers and cared for his family. But something had changed. He had stopped running. He had begun, in small ways, to listen. He did not know where this listening would lead. He did not know what the hollow place was asking for, or whether he would ever find what would fill it. But he had taken the first step. He had acknowledged the search. And that, as the old traveler had said, was the beginning. This story shows us something important about the feeling of emptiness. Saro had done everything right by the world's standards. He had worked hard. He had been responsible. He had built a good life. But none of this could touch the hollow place inside him. Zen teaches us that this restlessness is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of awakening. Something in us knows that material success, however valuable, cannot satisfy our deepest hunger. Something in us remembers a completeness we have lost touch with, and it will not stop calling until we turn and listen. The Buddha himself began his journey this way. He had wealth and comfort and everything a young prince could desire. Yet something in him remained unsatisfied. A question had awakened in him that palace walls could not answer. He did not know what he was looking for, but he knew that staying where he was meant never finding out. This is the nature of the search. It begins not with answers, but with recognition. We recognize that our ordinary strategies for happiness are not working. We recognize that something essential is missing, even if we cannot name it. We recognize that we have been running from a question that will not stop asking itself. The old traveler gave Saro a simple but profound teaching. Stop running. Turn toward the emptiness instead of away from it. Let it speak. This is the first step on every spiritual path. Not the finding, but the willingness to truly seek. Not the answers, but the courage to live with the questions. Let us explore another story that reveals more of this truth. In a village known for its weavers, there lived a young woman named Emmy who had never felt at home anywhere. From childhood, she had carried a restlessness she could not explain. Other children seemed content with their games and their families and their small daily worlds. But Emmy was always looking elsewhere, always sensing that something important was waiting for her, just beyond where she was. When she came of age, she left her village to seek what was missing. She was certain it existed somewhere. The right place, the right work, the right life. She just had to find it. She traveled to a city by the sea and found work in a weaving house. The building was large and busy, filled with the clack of looms and the chatter of women working side by side. Emmy threw herself into learning the craft. She mastered the techniques quickly and soon was producing cloth as fine as any of the experienced weavers. For a time, she was happy. The newness of everything satisfied her restless heart. The unfamiliar streets were exciting. The work challenged her. She made friends among the other weavers and explored the city on her free days. But slowly, inevitably, the feeling returned. The hollow space opened up again in her chest. She began to notice flaws in her new home. The city was too crowded. The work was too repetitive. The people she had befriended now seemed ordinary, disappointing. Surely this was not the place. Surely she had not traveled all this way to end up somewhere just as incomplete as where she had started. After 2 years, she left. She traveled inland to a mountain town where the air was cool and pine trees grew thick on the slopes. She found work with a weaver who specialized in ceremonial cloth, intricate patterns woven for temple rituals. The work was more demanding than anything she had done before. She had to learn new techniques and new patterns. Again, the challenge absorbed her. Again, for a time, she felt she had finally arrived. But the pattern repeated. The newness faded. The hollow feeling returned. She began to see faults everywhere. The mountain winters were too harsh. Her teacher was too demanding. The town was too small and quiet. Somewhere else, surely, the life she was seeking waited for her. She moved again, and again. A fishing village on the western coast, a trading town in the lowlands, a city famous for its silk. Each place seemed promising when she arrived. Each place eventually disappointed her. The emptiness that had driven her from home followed her everywhere, hiding for a while behind new experiences, then emerging again, as insistent as ever. By the time Emmy reached her 30th year, she had lived in more places than she could easily count. She had become a skilled weaver, capable of the finest work. But she was tired. The constant moving had worn her down. She was beginning to suspect, though she resisted the thought, that perhaps the problem was not with the places she had been. One autumn, she found herself in a small valley town, working in a dye house where cloth was colored before being woven into finished goods. The work was simpler than what she was used to. Soaking fabric, preparing dyes from plants and minerals, hanging the colored cloth to dry in the sun. It was humble work, and she had taken it only because she needed money to continue traveling. The dye house was run by an elderly woman named Oki, who had been coloring cloth for over 50 years. Her hands were stained deep indigo from decades of work. Her movements were slow and deliberate, patient in a way that made Emmy restless just to watch. At first, Emmy kept to herself. She did her work and planned where she would go next. Perhaps the capital. Perhaps a town she had heard of, where weavers created patterns she had never seen. Anywhere but here, in this quiet valley, doing work that did not challenge her. But Oki had a way of drawing people out. She did not ask direct questions or pry into Emmy's past. She simply talked while they worked, sharing small stories, commenting on the colors, wondering aloud about this or that. And somehow, without intending to, Emmy found herself talking too. One afternoon, while they were preparing a batch of yellow dye from gardenia, Emmy mentioned that she had lived in many places. How many? Oki asked, stirring the pot. Emmy tried to count. 11. Maybe 12. 12 places in how many years? 14 years. Oki nodded slowly, her eyes on the simmering dye. And what were you looking for? The question caught Emmy off guard. No one had ever asked her so directly. I do not know, she admitted. Something that was not where I was. Did you find it? Emmy was silent. The answer was obvious, and the speaking of it was painful. No, she finally said. Each place seemed right at first. Then after some time, it felt wrong, like something was missing. So I moved on. Oki lifted a cloth from the dye and examined its color in the afternoon light. She seemed in no hurry to respond. I have lived in this valley my whole life, she said eventually. I was born in the house where I still sleep. I have worked in this dye house since I was a girl of 12. I have never traveled more than a day's walk from where we stand. She lowered the cloth back into the pot. When I was young, I felt what you describe. That restlessness, that sense of something missing. I used to stand at the edge of the valley and look at the mountains and wonder what was on the other side. I imagined that life there would be different, more vivid, more complete. Why did you not go? Emmy asked. My mother was sick. Someone had to care for her. And then the dye house needed workers. And then there were children of my own. There was always a reason to stay. Oki smiled slightly. At first I resented it. I felt trapped. I watched others leave and imagined the lives they were living. I was certain they had found what I was missing. She paused, stirring the dye slowly. But over time, something changed. I stopped looking at the mountains. I started looking at what was in front of me, the colors emerging from the dye pots, the texture of the cloth in my hands, the way the light changed through the seasons, the faces of the people I worked with day after day. She turned to look at Emmy directly. Her eyes were kind but clear. I found that what I had been seeking was not somewhere else. It had been here all along. I had simply been too busy looking elsewhere to see it. Emmy felt a tightness in her chest. Something in Oki's words pressed against the hollowness she had carried for so long. But what if here is not enough? She asked. What if something really is missing? Oki nodded, as if this was the right question. Something is missing, but not what you think. What is missing is not a better place or a more exciting life. What is missing is your attention, your presence. You have been so busy searching that you have never fully arrived anywhere. You have been in many places, but present in none of them. She lifted another cloth from the dye, this one a deep golden yellow. Tell me, in all your travels, did you ever stop searching long enough to truly be where you were? Did you ever give yourself completely to a place, without part of you already planning your departure? Emmy tried to think of a time when she had. She could not. Even in her happiest moments in each new town, some part of her had been watching for signs of wrongness. Some part of her had been ready to leave. The emptiness follows you because you carry it with you, Oki said gently. You have been trying to leave it behind, but it lives in you, not in the places. No amount of moving will help you escape something that travels inside your own heart. Emmy felt tears pressing at her eyes. She had spent 14 years running. 14 years believing that the next place would be different. And here was this old woman who had never left her valley, telling her something she had always known but refused to see. "What do I do?" she asked, her voice small. Oki rinsed her hands in a basin of clean water. The movement was slow and careful, as if even this simple act deserved full attention. You stop running. You stop believing that wholeness is waiting somewhere else. You begin to look for it here, not in this valley necessarily, but wherever you are, right now, in this moment. You give your full attention to what is in front of you and see if the emptiness is still so empty. She dried her hands on a worn cloth and looked at Emmy with something like affection. You are a fine weaver. I can see it in your hands. But you have never truly woven anywhere. You have always been half present, half gone. What would happen if you stayed? Not forever, but long enough to actually be here? Long enough to find out if the problem is with the places or with the way you have been passing through them. Emmy stayed in the valley that winter. She had not planned to. She had intended to leave as soon as she had earned enough money. But something in Oki's words had unsettled her usual pattern. She wanted to test it. She wanted to see if the old woman was right. The days grew short and cold. The dye work continued, slower now, with longer periods between batches. Emmy had time to walk the valley paths, to learn the names of the families who lived nearby, to sit in the evenings by Oki's fire and listen to stories of a life lived entirely in one place. And gradually, without dramatic transformation, something shifted. The hollowness was still there. She could feel it when she sat quietly. But it no longer drove her with the same urgency. She was able to let it be present without immediately planning her escape. She began to notice things she would have overlooked before. The particular shade of blue the mountains turned at dusk. The way the snow silenced everything, creating a stillness she had never experienced in all her travels. The satisfaction of watching a cloth emerge from the dye pot, its color exactly right. She was not suddenly happy. She was not suddenly complete, but she was present in a way she had never been before. And in that presence, she discovered something unexpected. The hollow place was not asking her to find a better location. It was asking her to truly arrive, to stop running long enough to meet her own life. Spring came, and Emmy had a choice to make. She could continue traveling, as she had always done, or she could stay. She stayed, not because the valley was perfect, not because she had found what she was looking for, but because she had realized something important. The search she had been on could not be completed by moving from place to place. It required a different kind of journey altogether, a journey inward, a journey of attention and presence that could happen anywhere at all. And that journey, she was only beginning. This story reveals another face of the search. Emmy carried her emptiness with her from place to place, believing each time that she was leaving it behind. But as Oki gently showed her, the hollow place was not in the towns she visited. It was in herself. No amount of traveling could take her away from something that lived inside her own heart. Buddhism teaches that we often look for satisfaction in the wrong places. We believe that if we can arrange our external circumstances properly, if we can find the right partner or the right work or the right home, we will finally feel complete. But external arrangements, however pleasant, cannot touch the inner emptiness. They can distract us from it for a while. They can provide comfort and enjoyment. But they cannot fill what only presence can fill. The Buddha spoke of this tendency as a kind of thirst that is never satisfied by the things we drink. We consume experience after experience, pleasure after pleasure, achievement after achievement, and still we thirst. Not because the experiences are worthless, but because they are not what we are really thirsty for. Emmy's discovery was not that she should stop traveling or that one place was better than another. It was that she had never truly been where she was. She had spent 14 years in motion, but she had never arrived. Her attention was always split between where she was and where she might go next. The search for what is missing begins to transform when we realize this. When we see that the emptiness is not caused by our location or our circumstances, when we understand that what we seek cannot be found by looking elsewhere, then the search can turn inward. Then we can begin the deeper journey that the restlessness has been calling us toward all along. Take a gentle breath now. Feel the air entering your body and feel it leaving. Simply rest here, allowing this moment to hold you just as it is. When the hollow place opens inside us, we naturally look around for something to fill it. This is what humans do. We feel an emptiness, and we reach for something outside ourselves to ease it. A possession, a position, a change in circumstances. We believe that if we can just arrange the outer world properly, the inner ache will finally quiet. The Buddha observed this tendency with great compassion. He saw how we grasp at pleasures, at status, at material comforts, believing each one will bring the peace we seek. And he saw how this grasping leads not to satisfaction, but to more grasping. We get what we wanted, and for a moment we feel relief. Then the emptiness returns, and we reach for something else. Zen calls this the endless search. We look outward because it seems easier than looking inward. The outer world is visible, tangible, something we feel we can control. But Buddhism teaches us that what we seek cannot be found in external things. Not because those things are bad, but because the emptiness is not that kind of hunger. We are trying to feed a spiritual longing with material food. No matter how much we consume, we remain hungry. When we begin to see this pattern clearly, something important happens. We do not necessarily stop wanting things or enjoying the pleasures of life, but we stop expecting them to fill the hollow place. We stop putting that burden on possessions and circumstances that were never meant to carry it. And in that releasing, we become free to look in a different direction. Let us explore a story that shows this truth. In a village known for its fine pottery, there lived a young man named Tala who worked in his father's shop. Each day he mixed clay, shaped vessels on the wheel, and loaded the kiln with pieces to be fired. It was honest work, and his family had done it for generations. But Tala was not content. As he worked the clay, his mind wandered to other lives he might be living. He watched the merchants who came to buy pottery and imagined their freedom, traveling from town to town, seeing new places, answering to no one. He watched the local magistrate pass through the village in his fine robes and imagined the respect such a position would bring. He watched the wealthy landowner whose fields stretched across the valley and imagined never worrying about money again. His hands shaped bowls and cups, but his thoughts shaped fantasies of different lives. If only he were a merchant. If only he had power. If only he were rich. Then he would be happy. Then the restless feeling that followed him through his days would finally ease. His father noticed the faraway look in Tala's eyes, the sighs that escaped him as he worked. One evening, after the shop had closed and they sat together cleaning their tools, his father spoke. "You seem troubled, son. Your hands do good work, but your heart is not in it." Tala hesitated. He did not want to seem ungrateful. His father had taught him everything, had given him a trade that would support him all his life. But the truth pressed against his chest, demanding to be spoken. "I look at my life," Tala said slowly, "and I see the same days repeating forever. The same clay, the same wheel, the same village. I watch others pass through with their different lives, and I wonder what it would be like to be them. The merchant who goes where he pleases, the magistrate whom everyone respects, the landowner who never worries about his next meal." His father listened without interrupting. When Tala finished, the older man was quiet for a long moment. "When I was your age," he finally said, "I felt the same way. I looked at the potter's wheel and saw a prison. I looked at other men's lives and saw freedom. I believed that happiness was somewhere else, in some other circumstance I had not yet reached." "What changed?" Taylor asked. "I met a man who showed me something I had not seen. He was a traveler who came through the village, an old monk who had wandered for many years. I told him what I have just told you, that I wanted a different life, that I believed happiness was waiting somewhere else." His father set down the tool he had been cleaning and looked at Tala directly. "The monk asked me a simple question. He said, 'If you became a merchant tomorrow, what would you feel after a year?' I told him I would feel free and happy. He shook his head. 'You would feel exactly as you feel now,' he said. 'You would look at other lives and wish you had them instead. The magistrate's power, the landowner's wealth, perhaps even the potter's simple peace. The restlessness you feel is not caused by your circumstances. It lives in you. It will follow you wherever you go." Tala frowned. "But surely some lives are better than others. Surely the rich man is happier than the poor man." "That is what I said too," his father replied. "And the monk told me something I have never forgotten. He said, 'I have met rich men who cannot sleep at night for worry. I have met powerful men who trust no one and live in fear. I have met merchants who are exhausted from constant travel and dream of a quiet home. And I have met simple craftsmen who want for nothing because they have learned to be where they are. Happiness is not a place you can travel to. It is a way of being where you already are. Tala was not convinced. It sounded like something people said to make themselves feel better about not having more. His father seemed to sense his doubt. I did not believe him either, so I tested it. The next year, I had a chance to become a merchant. A trader offered to take me on as a partner. I could leave the pottery behind and see the world. You never told me this, Tala said, surprised. I took the offer. I traveled for 2 years, buying and selling goods across 3 provinces. I saw cities I had only heard of in stories. I ate foods I had never tasted. I slept in fine inns and met people from distant lands. What happened? His father smiled, but there was something sad in it. The monk was right. After the newness faded, I felt exactly as I had before. The same restlessness, the same sense that something was missing. I would lie awake in comfortable beds in beautiful cities and feel the same hollow ache I had felt in my father's pottery shop. I began to look at other lives and wish I had them instead. The successful merchants seemed happier than me. The scholars seemed more fulfilled. Even the simple farmers we passed on the road seemed more at peace than I felt. He picked up his cleaning cloth again, working at a spot of dried clay. I realized that I had carried my unhappiness with me. The circumstances had changed completely, but I had not changed at all. I was still looking outward for something that could only be found inward. I was still believing that the next change, the next achievement, the next different life would finally bring peace. So you came back, Tala said. I came back. Not because this life is better than the merchant's life, but because I finally understood that no outer change would give me what I was seeking. The work was here. He touched his chest. Inside. Learning to be present. Learning to stop looking elsewhere. Learning to find what I was seeking in the life I already had. Tala sat with this for a long time. Part of him resisted. Part of him still believed that a different life would feel different, that the hollow place was caused by his circumstances and could be cured by changing them. But another part recognized something true in his father's words. He had watched the merchants who came to buy pottery. They did not seem particularly happy. They haggled over prices, worried about their goods, complained about the roads and the weather. The magistrate, for all his fine robes, walked with a heaviness that suggested his position brought more burden than joy. The wealthy landowner was known throughout the village for his sour temper and his endless disputes with his neighbors. Perhaps his father was right. Perhaps the restlessness was not about where he was, but about how he was. Perhaps looking outward for peace was like looking for water in the sky while standing beside a well. He did not become content overnight. The fantasies of other lives still arose. The grass still looked greener elsewhere. But something had shifted. He had begun to suspect that the search he was on could not be completed by changing his circumstances. He had begun to wonder if the hollow place was asking for a different kind of attention altogether. In the years that followed, Tala remained at the pottery wheel. But he was not the same man who had shaped clay while dreaming of escape. He had begun the slower, harder work of learning to be where he was, of finding what he sought not in some imagined future, but in the present moment, in the feel of clay beneath his hands, in the simple rhythm of work and rest. He never forgot his father's story. And when his own children grew old enough to work beside him, and he saw in their eyes the same faraway look he had once worn, he knew it would be his turn to share what he had learned. This story shows us how the outward search perpetuates itself. Tala believed his circumstances were the problem, that a different life would bring different feelings. His father's experience revealed the truth that Zen has always taught: we carry ourselves wherever we go. The restless mind does not become peaceful by changing locations or acquiring new positions. It becomes peaceful by changing its relationship to wherever it already is. The Buddha spoke often of this pattern. He called it the wheel of craving. We want something, we get it, we enjoy it briefly, and then we want something else. The wheel keeps turning because we keep believing that the next thing will finally satisfy us. But satisfaction does not come from getting. It comes from releasing the belief that getting will make us whole. This does not mean we should not have goals or enjoy the good things of life. Buddhism is not about deprivation or forcing ourselves to want nothing. It is about seeing clearly where peace actually comes from. When we stop expecting external things to fill the inner emptiness, we can enjoy them for what they are without burdening them with impossible expectations. We can appreciate a meal without needing it to make us happy. We can enjoy success without needing it to make us complete. The search for fulfillment through external things is exhausting because it never ends. There is always something more to acquire, some better circumstance to achieve, some other life that looks more appealing than our own. Zen invites us to step off this wheel, not by giving up on life, but by giving up on the belief that life must be different before we can be at peace. Let us explore another story that reveals more of this truth. In a city known for its artisans and traders, there lived a woman named Mina who had a gift for finding beautiful things. She had an eye that could spot quality instantly, and a memory for where rare items might be found. Over the years, she had filled her home with objects of remarkable beauty. There were ceramic bowls glazed in colors that seemed to glow from within. There were wooden carvings, so detailed that the figures seemed about to move. There were textiles woven with patterns passed down through generations of craftspeople. Each piece had been chosen carefully, sought out with patience, and acquired with satisfaction. Mina loved the moment of finding, the thrill of spotting something special in a crowded market stall, the negotiation with the seller, the walk home with the new treasure wrapped carefully in cloth. In those moments, she felt complete. The hollow place inside her that seemed to be her constant companion would quiet, and something like peace would settle over her. But the peace never lasted. Within days, sometimes hours, the old restlessness would return. The new acquisition would take its place among the others, becoming familiar, losing its shine. And Mina would find herself looking again, scanning the market stalls, asking traders about rare pieces, planning her next find. She knew, on some level, that this pattern was strange. Her home was already full. She had more beautiful objects than she could properly appreciate. Some sat on shelves she rarely looked at. Others were packed away in storage rooms because there was no space to display them. And yet, she kept searching, kept acquiring, as if the next piece would finally be the one that satisfied her for good. One autumn, a new shop opened near the central market. It was run by an elderly woman named Akari, who had traveled widely in her youth and collected objects from distant lands. The shop was small and cluttered, every surface covered with items Mina had never seen before. Mina became a regular visitor. She would spend hours examining the strange and beautiful things Akari had gathered, asking about their origins, learning the stories behind them. And she bought, of course, a painted screen from across the sea, a stone figure worn smooth by centuries of handling, a bronze bell whose tone seemed to hang in the air long after it had been struck. Akari watched her with interest. The old woman said little at first, simply answering questions about her wares and accepting payment for the pieces Mina chose. But as the weeks passed and Mina returned again and again, Akari began to engage her in conversation. One afternoon, as Mina examined a small jade pendant, Akari asked, "How many of these do you have at home?" Mina looked up, confused. "Jade pendants? I do not think I have any like this one." "Beautiful things," Akari clarified. "Objects you have collected. How many would you say?" Mina tried to count in her head and found she could not. "I do not know. Many. Several rooms full. And this one," Akari gestured at the pendant. "When you bring it home, how long will you enjoy it?" The question caught Mina off guard. She set the pendant down slowly. "What do you mean?" "I have watched you these past months. You find something beautiful. Your eyes light up. You must have it. You take it home. And then, after a little while, you return here looking for something else. Always looking. Always acquiring. Always needing the next thing." Mina felt defensive. "I simply appreciate beauty." "Is that wrong?" "There is nothing wrong with appreciating beauty," Akari said gently. "But I wonder if that is what you are really doing. You do not seem like a woman at peace with her beautiful things. You seem like a woman still searching for something." Mina wanted to argue, but the words caught in her throat. The old woman had seen something true. Akari gestured around her cluttered shop. "I collected these things over many years. I traveled far and spent much of my life seeking beautiful objects, just as you do. Each one brought me joy when I found it. Each one promised to be the thing that finally satisfied me." She picked up a small ceramic cup, turning it in her weathered hands. "But no object can satisfy what you are truly hungry for. I learned this slowly, over many years. The hunger you feel is not for beautiful things. It wears the mask of that desire, but it is something else underneath. Something that no amount of collecting can touch." Mina sat down on a wooden stool, feeling suddenly tired. "Then what am I searching for?" Akari set the cup down carefully. "That is the question, is it not? We look outward because it is easier than looking inward. A beautiful object is something we can see and hold and own. The emptiness inside us is harder to face. It has no form. It cannot be purchased or displayed on a shelf." She looked at Mina with kindness. "You are not wrong to love beautiful things. Beauty is a gift. But you have been asking beauty to do something it cannot do. You have been asking it to make you whole, to fill the hollow place. And each time it fails, you blame the object and seek another one. The problem is not with the objects. The problem is with what you are asking them to provide." Mina thought about her home, stuffed with treasures she barely looked at anymore. She thought about the brief thrill of each acquisition and the disappointment that always followed. She thought about how the searching never ended, how the satisfaction never lasted, how she was always looking for the next thing, even as she carried the current thing home. "What do I do?" she asked quietly. Akari smiled. "You have already begun. You are asking the question, Most people never get that far. They keep searching and acquiring their whole lives, never stopping to wonder why it does not work. She moves slowly around the shop, straightening objects, adjusting displays. The next time you feel that pull toward a beautiful thing, pause. Ask yourself what you are really hoping it will give you. Peace? Completeness? The end of restlessness? No object can provide these things. When you see this clearly, the desperate quality of the searching begins to fade. You can still enjoy beauty, but you stop expecting it to save you. Mina did not buy anything that day. She walked home through the market streets, past stalls filled with items that would have caught her eye before, and felt something different. The pull was still there. The habit of looking was strong. But there was also a new awareness. A small voice asking, "What am I really searching for?" In the weeks that followed, Mina began to experiment. When the urge to acquire arose, she would sit with it instead of immediately acting. She would feel the restlessness in her chest, the belief that something out there would ease it. And she would ask the question Akari had taught her. What am I really hoping this will give me? The answer was always the same. Peace, completeness, an end to the endless wanting. And when she saw this clearly, the power of the urge would soften. Not disappear entirely, but loosen its grip. She began to see that she had been asking the wrong question all along. Not which beautiful thing should I acquire next, but why do I believe acquiring will help? She visited Akari often that winter. Not to buy, but to talk. The old woman had walked this path before her and knew its turns. The search outward is not bad, Akari told her once. It is just incomplete. We have to look outward for a while to discover that what we seek is not there. Every beautiful thing you collected was a teacher. Each one showed you that acquisition does not satisfy. You needed many teachers before you were ready to learn the lesson. Mina began to look at her collection differently. The objects were still beautiful, but they no longer carried the weight of her expectations. They were simply what they were. Bowls and carvings and textiles. Pleasant to look at, but not responsible for her happiness. And in that releasing, something unexpected happened. She began to actually see them for the first time. Without the desperate need for them to provide something, she could appreciate what they actually offered. The grain of the wood, the depth of the glaze, the patience of the weaver who had created each pattern. She had been so focused on what the objects might give her that she had never truly received what they had to offer. Spring came, and Mina found herself in Akari's shop less often. The compulsion that had driven her there was fading. She still appreciated beauty when she encountered it, but she no longer needed to own it, to possess it, to take it home and add it to her hoard. The hollow place was still present. It had not disappeared, but she had stopped asking beautiful objects to fill it. She had begun to turn her attention in a different direction, toward the emptiness itself, toward the question of what it really wanted. And that, as Akari had told her, was where the true search began. Zen teaches us that attachment creates suffering not because the things we attach to are bad, but because we ask them to provide something they cannot give. Mina's beautiful objects were genuinely beautiful, but she had burdened them with the task of making her complete, and this was a task they could never fulfill. The Buddha identified this pattern as one of the root causes of human suffering. We see something pleasant and we grasp at it, believing it will make us happy. We get it, and for a moment we feel satisfaction. But the satisfaction fades, and we grasp again. The problem is not with pleasure itself, but with our belief that if we can just get enough pleasure, accumulate enough pleasant things, arrange our lives well enough, we will finally be at peace. Buddhism offers another way. Not the rejection of beauty or pleasure, but the releasing of our desperate grip on them. When we stop expecting external things to fill the internal emptiness, we discover a different relationship with the world. We can enjoy what is here without needing it to be more than it is. We can appreciate beauty without needing to possess it. We can receive what life offers without demanding that it make us whole. This releasing is not a loss. It is a liberation. Mina's collection did not bring her less joy when she stopped expecting it to save her. It brought her more. She could finally see what was actually there instead of what she hoped it would provide. The outward search is where most of us begin. We look for peace in possessions, in achievements, in circumstances. This is natural and human. But at some point, if we are paying attention, we notice that it is not working. The things we acquire do not satisfy us for long. The circumstances we arrange do not bring lasting peace. And in that noticing, we become ready to look in a different direction. Take a gentle breath now. Let your body settle a little deeper into rest. There is nothing you need to acquire right now. Nothing you need to seek. Simply allow yourself to be here, in this moment, complete as you are. There is a tiredness that comes not from work but from wanting. We may not notice it at first. The desire for more, for better, for different, feels like energy. It drives us forward, keeps us striving, gives our days a sense of purpose. But underneath this forward motion, something is being spent. The constant reaching depletes us in ways we do not see until we are exhausted. Zen teaches us that wanting itself is a kind of labor. Each desire we carry is a weight. Each hope that things will be different is a burden we shoulder. We may think we are simply living our lives, but we are also hauling an invisible load of wishes and expectations, fears and fantasies about how things should be. The Buddha spoke of this as a fundamental truth of human experience. We suffer not because life is difficult, though it often is, but because we are constantly wanting it to be other than it is. This wanting never rests. It follows us through our days, whispering that we do not have enough, that we are not enough, that peace lies somewhere ahead if we just keep reaching for it. Buddhism invites us to notice this weight, not to judge ourselves for carrying it, but simply to see how heavy it has become. When we recognize how much energy goes into wanting, we begin to understand why we are so tired. And in that understanding, we may discover the possibility of setting some of it down. Let us explore a story that shows this truth. In a village by the sea, there lived a fisherman named Ten, who was known for working harder than anyone else. He was the first to launch his boat each morning and the last to return each evening. While other fishermen rested during storms or took days off to be with their families, Ten was always planning, always preparing, always thinking about the next catch. He had not always been this way. As a young man, he had fished the way his father had taught him, going out when conditions were good, resting when they were not, taking what the sea offered without grasping for more. It had been a simple life, and for a time, it had been enough. But something had shifted in him over the years. He had begun to notice what other fishermen brought in. He had begun to compare his catch to theirs, his boat to theirs, his nets to theirs. A small voice had started whispering that he should have more, that if he worked harder, tried new waters, used better equipment, he could finally get ahead. The voice grew louder as the years passed. One good catch was no longer satisfying because it could have been better. One successful season only raised his expectations for the next. He found himself unable to enjoy what he had because his mind was always calculating what he lacked. His wife, Kara, watched this change with worry. The man she had married knew how to laugh, how to rest, how to sit on the beach at evening and watch the sun go down. This new man was always tense, always planning, always somewhere else in his mind, even when his body was home. She tried to talk to him about it, but he brushed her concerns aside. He was providing for his family. He was building something. She did not understand the pressures he faced, the competition from other fishermen, the uncertainty of the sea. He had to work this hard. There was no other way. But his body began to tell a different story. His shoulders ached constantly from hauling nets. His hands cramped even when he was not working. He slept poorly, his mind running through plans and worries even in his dreams. He caught himself snapping at his children for small things, his patience worn thin by exhaustion he would not acknowledge. One evening, returning late from a day that had yielded little despite hours of effort, Ten found an old man sitting on the dock near where he tied his boat. The man was a stranger, with the weathered look of someone who had spent his life near the water. He sat peacefully, watching the last light fade from the sky. Ten was too tired for conversation. He secured his boat with quick, irritated movements, wanting only to go home and collapse. But the old man spoke. "Not a good day on the water?" Ten grunted. The fish were not where they should have been. I tried 3 different spots. Nothing. And yet the sea is full of fish, the old man observed mildly. Something in his tone made Ten pause. "What do you mean by that?" "Only that the fish are there. They have always been there. The question is whether we can receive what the sea offers, or whether we are too busy demanding what it should offer." Ten set down the net he had been folding. "You sound like a man who has never had to make a living from fishing." The old man smiled. "I fished these waters for 40 years. This very dock is where I used to tie my boat." He gestured at the weathered planks. "I know the pressure you feel. I felt it myself for many years." Ten looked at him more carefully. There was something calm about the old man, a settledness that Ten had not felt in himself for a long time. "You do not fish anymore?" "My fishing days are done. My body made that choice for me, eventually. But long before that, I learned something that changed how I worked." Despite his exhaustion, Ten found himself curious. "What did you learn?" The old man was quiet for a moment, looking out at the darkening water. "I learned that I was carrying 2 loads. One was the actual work of fishing, the nets, the boat, the early mornings, the physical labor. This load was heavy but honest. It was the work I had chosen, and I could bear it." He turned to look at Ten directly. The other load was invisible but far heavier. It was made of wanting more fish, wanting better catches than other men, wanting to feel secure, to get ahead, to finally have enough. This load never got lighter, no matter how hard I worked. In fact, the harder I worked, the heavier it became. 10 felt something stir in his chest. The old man was describing something he recognized but had never put into words. I thought the tiredness came from the work, the old man continued. I thought if I could just catch enough fish, make enough money, I would finally be able to rest. But it was never enough. Each success only raised my expectations. Each good season just made me fear the next one would be worse. I was exhausted not from fishing but from wanting. But we have to want things, 10 said. We have to strive. Otherwise, how do we survive? How do we provide for our families? There is a difference between working and grasping, the old man replied. You can fish without being consumed by wanting. You can work hard without carrying the extra burden of needing things to be different than they are. I did not understand this for many years. I thought the wanting was what drove me. I did not see that it was what was draining me. 10 sat down heavily on the dock. His body ached. His mind was tired. And somewhere beneath both, he could feel what the old man was describing. A constant tension. A perpetual reaching. A weight he had been carrying so long he had forgotten it was there. How did you set it down? He asked. The wanting. How did you let go of it? The old man smiled gently. I did not let go of it all at once. That is not how it works. But I began to notice it. Each time I felt that desperate need for more, that fear that what I had was not enough, I would pause. I would feel the weight of it. And sometimes, just in the noticing, it would lighten a little. He picked up a small stone from the dock and held it in his palm. We think we need the wanting. We think it motivates us, keeps us going. But wanting is exhausting. It takes energy to always be reaching for something else. When I began to let go, even a little, I found I had more strength for the actual work. The fishing itself became easier because I was not carrying the extra load. 10 thought about his days. The constant mental calculation. The comparison with other fishermen. The fear that he was falling behind, that he would never have enough. He realized that even when he was resting, he was not really resting. The wanting continued in his mind, planning and worrying and reaching. I do not know how to stop, he admitted. The wanting feels like part of me. Like if I let go of it, I would have nothing left. That is what I thought too, the old man said. But it is not true. Beneath the wanting, there is something else. A simpler way of being that does not need to constantly grasp. You were born knowing this. Watch a child play. They are fully present, not wanting the moment to be different. Somewhere along the way, we forget. But it is still there, underneath. He dropped the stone back onto the dock with a small click. Start by noticing. That is all. When you feel the wanting rise up, just see it. Feel how heavy it is. You do not have to force it away. Just recognize what you are carrying. Over time, awareness itself begins to lighten the load. 10 walked home slowly that night. He was still tired, but something felt different. He had begun to see the invisible weight he had been hauling, the wanting that never rested, the constant reaching for more that had been draining him for years. He did not transform overnight. The habits of wanting were deep, worn into him like grooves in a well-traveled path. But he began to notice, as the old man had suggested. When he caught himself comparing his catch to another fisherman's, he would pause. When he felt the desperate need to do more, try harder, push further, he would feel the weight of it. Slowly, gradually, something shifted. The wanting did not disappear entirely, but it loosened its grip. He found moments of ease he had not felt in years. He found he could rest without his mind spinning toward the next day's plans. He found he could be with his family without that constant pull toward something else. And strangely, his fishing did not suffer. If anything, it improved. Without the exhausting weight of wanting, he had more energy for the work itself. He could pay attention to the sea, to the weather, to the subtle signs that told him where the fish were. He was no longer fighting the water. He was working with it. The old man had been right. The heaviest load was not the work. It was the wanting. And when he began to set that burden down, he discovered a strength he had forgotten he had. This story reveals something important about the nature of seeking. Ten believed his exhaustion came from hard work, but the deeper drain was the constant wanting that ran beneath everything he did. This wanting never let him rest, never let him feel satisfied, never let him be where he was. Zen teaches us to examine this relationship between effort and grasping. Effort itself is not the problem. We can work hard, strive toward goals, build meaningful things without being consumed by wanting. The trouble comes when we add the extra layer of desperate need. When we cannot simply do the work but must also worry and compare and fear and grasp. The Buddha identified this grasping as one of the primary causes of suffering. We exhaust ourselves not with living, but with wanting life to be different. We spend enormous energy resisting what is, reaching for what is not, fearing what might come. This energy could be used for life itself, but instead it drains away in the endless work of wanting. When we begin to notice this pattern, we discover something surprising. The wanting we thought was necessary, the grasping we believed motivated us, turns out to be a burden we can set down. Life does not fall apart when we stop desperately needing things to be different. Often, it becomes easier. The work is still there, but without the extra weight, we have more strength to do it. Let us explore another story that reveals more of this truth. In a monastery in the mountains, there lived a young monk named Jiro who wanted very badly to become enlightened. He had entered the monastery at 16, full of idealism and determination. He had heard stories of the old masters who had awakened to the truth, and he wanted that awakening more than anything. He threw himself into practice with fierce intensity. He sat in meditation longer than any of the other monks, forcing his legs to endure the pain, forcing his mind to stay focused. He memorized sutras and commentaries, filling his head with the words of the ancient teachers. He sought out the most demanding tasks, believing that hard work would purify him and bring him closer to his goal. The years passed, and enlightenment did not come. Jiro sat through countless hours of meditation. He read hundreds of texts. He worked until his body ached and his mind was dull with exhaustion. But the breakthrough he longed for remained out of reach. He watched other monks carefully, looking for signs that they had found what he was seeking. Some seemed more peaceful than he felt, more at ease in their daily activities. He would study them, trying to discover their secret, then redouble his own efforts, convinced that he simply needed to try harder. By his 10th year at the monastery, Jiro was exhausted in a way that sleep could not cure. His meditation had become a grim battle. His study felt like pushing a boulder uphill. The joy he had once felt in practice had long since faded, replaced by a desperate determination that brought no peace. One afternoon, the old cook who worked in the monastery kitchen noticed Jiro sitting alone after the midday meal. The young monk looked haggard, his face tight with strain. The cook was a simple man named Bao who had worked in the kitchen for over 30 years. He was not known for giving teachings or engaging in philosophical discussions. He just cooked. He prepared rice and vegetables and tea day after day with a quiet steadiness that most of the monks barely noticed. Bao sat down across from Jiro with a cup of tea. "You look like a man carrying a heavy stone up a mountain." Jiro was surprised. The cook rarely spoke to anyone beyond what was necessary for his work. "I'm trying to make progress in my practice," he said. "It is more difficult than I expected." "Progress toward what?" "Enlightenment. Understanding. The breakthrough the masters speak of." Bao nodded slowly, sipping his tea. "And how long have you been trying?" 10 years. 10 years of trying. That is a long time to carry a heavy stone. Jiro felt defensive. "The path is difficult. The masters say it requires great effort." "They do say that," Bao agreed. "But I wonder what kind of effort they mean." He set down his cup and looked at Jiro with unexpectedly sharp eyes. "When I first came to this monastery, I wanted enlightenment too. I sat in meditation until my back screamed. I studied until my head ached. I tried and tried and tried. What happened? I was assigned to the kitchen. I was disappointed at first. I thought kitchen work was a distraction from real practice. I wanted to be in the meditation hall with the serious monks, not peeling vegetables." He smiled at the memory. "But I had no choice. So I peeled vegetables. I washed rice. I stirred pots and cleaned floors and did what was in front of me to do. And slowly, without intending it, something changed." Jiro leaned forward slightly. "What changed?" "I stopped trying so hard. In the kitchen, there was no time for desperate seeking. There was just the work. The rice needed to be cooked. The vegetables needed to be cut. I could not sit there longing for enlightenment while the soup boiled over." He picked up his cup again, turning it in his weathered hands. "I discovered that the wanting was the problem. I had been so busy reaching for awakening that I could not be awake to the present moment. I was always somewhere else in my mind, imagining the breakthrough that would come someday. Meanwhile, the only moment that actually existed was passing by unnoticed." Jiro felt something loosen in his chest. The cook was describing exactly what he experienced but had never questioned. The constant reaching. The perpetual sense of being on the way to somewhere else. "But how can we awaken if we do not try?" Jiro asked. "How can we progress if we do not make effort?" Bao considered this carefully. "There is effort and there is grasping. Effort is natural. You put wood on the fire and it burns. You plant seeds and they grow. This kind of effort flows with life. Grasping is different. Grasping is the desperate need to control the outcome. It is trying to force the fire to burn faster, trying to pull the seeds up to make them grow sooner. He gestured toward the kitchen behind them. When I cook, I make effort. I cut the vegetables. I tend the fire. I pay attention to what is needed. But I do not grasp at the food, demanding it be ready before its time. I do not exhaust myself wanting the meal to be something other than what it is. I work, and then I let the work do what it will do. Jiro thought about his own practice. The hours of meditation spent not in presence but in wanting presence. The desperate hope that this session would be the one, this teaching would finally unlock the door. He had been grasping so hard that his hands were cramped with the effort. "You are tired," Bao said gently, "because wanting is exhausting work. You have been trying to force something that cannot be forced. Awakening is not a destination you can march toward by trying harder. It is more like falling asleep. The harder you try to sleep, the more awake you stay. You have to let go, allow it to come, stop gripping so tightly. But what do I do? Just stop practicing? No. Keep practicing. But practice without the desperate wanting. Sit in meditation without needing it to produce. That what you were seeking was never at the top of the mountain. It was in the walking itself, in being fully present for each step instead of always looking ahead to where you thought you needed to arrive. In the months that followed, Jiro tried something different. He still meditated, but without the grim desperation. He still studied, but without demanding that it produce results. When he noticed himself grasping, wanting, needing practice to give him something, he would remember Bao's words and gently let go. It was harder than he expected, this not trying so hard. The habit of wanting was deeply ingrained. But slowly, something began to shift. The exhaustion that had become his constant companion started to lift. Moments of actual peace appeared in his meditation. Not the peace he had been chasing, but a simpler peace that asked for nothing. He spent more time in the kitchen, helping Bao with his work. There was something about the simple tasks that made letting go easier. The vegetables needed to be cut. The rice needed to be washed. There was no room for wanting when there was work to be done. And one ordinary morning, stirring a pot of rice porridge while the sun rose outside the kitchen window, something shifted in Jiro. There was no dramatic breakthrough, no explosion of insight, no moment of cosmic understanding. There was just this, the steam rising from the pot, the wooden spoon in his hand, the light coming through the window, and a profound peace that had been there all along, waiting for him to stop reaching past it toward something else. He understood then what Bao had been pointing toward. The enlightenment he had sought was not somewhere ahead. It was here, in this moment, in every moment. He had been unable to see it because he was so busy looking elsewhere. The wanting had been like a veil, always keeping the present moment just out of reach. He laughed softly, and Bao looked up from his work with a knowing smile. "The rice is ready," the old cook said. And it was. It had been ready all along. This story shows us the particular weight of spiritual wanting. Jiro's desire for enlightenment, though understandable, had become the very thing preventing him from finding what he sought. He was so busy reaching for awakening that he could not be awake to the moment in front of him. The Buddha taught that even the desire for liberation can become a form of bondage. When we grasp at spiritual attainment the way we grasp at material success, we create the same exhausting pattern. We are still reaching, still wanting, still believing that what we seek lies somewhere other than here. Zen masters often speak of this paradox. We practice in order to awaken, yet the awakening we seek is already present. It is hidden not by its distance but by our constant movement away from it. When we stop reaching, stop grasping, stop wanting things to be other than they are, we discover what was here all along. This does not mean we abandon practice or effort. Jiro continued to meditate and study, but the quality of his effort changed. It became lighter, more natural, less burdened by desperate need. He learned to work without grasping at results, to practice without demanding that practice produce something. Buddhism teaches that the heaviest burdens we carry are often invisible. The weight of wanting more, of needing things to be different, of constantly reaching for what is not here. When we begin to notice these burdens, to feel how heavy they have become, we take the first step toward setting them down. And in that lightening, we discover an energy and a peace we had forgotten were possible. Take a gentle breath now. Feel how your body is already resting, already breathing, already at peace in this moment. There is a strange paradox at the heart of seeking. The very act of searching can become what keeps us from finding. We look so hard for what we want that we cannot see it when it appears. We strain so intensely toward a goal that we push it further away with each effort. Zen teaches us that this paradox runs through all of spiritual life. We seek peace, but the seeking creates agitation. We want to be present, but the wanting pulls us out of presence. We search for our true nature, but the searching implies it is somewhere other than here. The harder we look, the more we reinforce the belief that what we seek is missing. The Buddha understood this deeply. He spent years searching for liberation through extreme practices, pushing his body and mind to their limits. But awakening came only when he released the desperate striving. It came when he sat quietly beneath a tree and stopped trying to get somewhere. The searching had been necessary to bring him to that point, but it was the releasing that allowed him to arrive. Buddhism shows us that sometimes the kindest thing we can do is stop looking. Not forever, not in despair, but simply pausing the frantic search long enough to notice what is already here. In that pause, we may discover that what we have been seeking was never far away. It was simply hidden by the dust we raised in our hurry to find it. Let us explore a story that shows this truth. In a small village surrounded by rice fields, there lived a young woman named Hana who longed to understand the meaning of life. From childhood, she had felt that there must be something more than the daily round of planting and harvesting, cooking and cleaning. She watched the older villagers go about their routines and wondered if they had ever asked the questions that burned in her. She sought out the village elder, a woman respected for her wisdom, and asked her about the deeper truths. The elder smiled kindly but said only, "The rice needs planting. The children need feeding. This is life." Hana was not satisfied. There had to be more. There had to be teachers who knew the answers she was seeking, masters who had penetrated the mysteries she could only glimpse. She began to hear stories of a great teacher who lived in a distant city. People said he had attained profound realization and could guide students to awakening with a single word. They said his presence alone was enough to transform those who met him. They called him Master Wen, and his reputation had spread across many provinces. Hannah knew she had to find him. She saved money from her work in the fields. She prepared for a long journey. Her parents worried about her traveling alone, but they could see the determination in her eyes. They gave her their blessing and a small bundle of provisions. The journey took many weeks. Hannah walked through forests and over mountains. She crossed rivers and passed through towns she had only heard of in stories. She slept in temples and farmhouses, always asking about Master Wen, always following the trail of rumors and reports. Finally, she reached the city where he was said to live. It was larger than anywhere she had ever been, crowded with people and noise and activity. She asked everywhere for the great teacher, but no one seemed to know exactly where he could be found. She searched for days. She visited temples and meditation halls. She asked scholars and monks and ordinary people on the street. Some had heard of Master Wen. Some thought he had moved to another city. Some said he had died years ago. The stories contradicted each other, and Hannah grew confused and discouraged. One evening, exhausted and nearly out of money, she sat by a fountain in the center of the city. She had traveled so far. She had given up so much. And now it seemed the teacher she sought did not exist, or could not be found, or had never been what the stories claimed. An old man sat down beside her. He had a kind face and simple clothes, the look of someone who worked with his hands. He noticed her distress. "You seem troubled, young one. Are you lost?" Hannah laughed bitterly. "I have been lost since I arrived. I came seeking a great teacher, Master Wen, but no one can tell me where to find him. Perhaps he was never real." The old man nodded thoughtfully. "I have heard of this Master Wen. Many people come looking for him. They travel great distances, searching and searching." He paused. "May I ask what you hope he will give you?" Hannah considered the question. "Understanding. Wisdom. The answers to questions that have troubled me since I was a child. I feel there is something important I am missing, something that would make sense of everything. I thought a great teacher could show me what it is. And if you found this teacher and he gave you understanding, what then? Then I would be at peace. Then I would know how to live." The old man was quiet for a moment, watching the water fall in the fountain. "I will tell you something," he said, "but I'm not sure you are ready to hear it. Please, I have come so far. I will listen to anything. The teacher you are looking for cannot give you what you seek. Not because he lacks wisdom, but because what you seek cannot be given. It can only be recognized. And you cannot recognize it while you are so busy searching for it somewhere else." Hannah frowned. "I do not understand. You have traveled many weeks to find understanding. But understanding is not a place you can travel to. It is not a thing a teacher can hand you like a bundle of rice. It is something you already have but cannot see because you are looking too hard." He turned to face her directly. His eyes were bright and clear. "Tell me, in all your searching, in all your traveling, have you ever stopped? Have you ever sat quietly and asked what is here, right now, before you add all your wanting and seeking?" Hana realized she had not. Even in her quietest moments, her mind had been reaching forward, planning the next step of the search, hoping the next teacher or the next teaching would finally provide what she needed. "The great teacher you seek," the old man said gently, "is not hiding from you. But he cannot be found by seeking. The more desperately you search, the more you confirm to yourself that what you want is far away, that you do not already have it. Your searching creates the distance." He stood up slowly, preparing to leave. "Go home, young one. Not because the journey was wasted, but because it has brought you to this moment. Go home, and instead of seeking, try simply being. Sit with your questions without demanding answers. Let the search rest. You may find that what you traveled so far to discover was waiting for you all along, in the last place you thought to look." Hana wanted to ask more questions, but the old man bowed slightly and walked away into the evening crowd. She sat by the fountain for a long time, watching the water, feeling something shift inside her. The journey home was different from the journey out. She was not rushing toward anything. She was not hoping that the next village or the next conversation would provide what she needed. She simply walked, noticing the path beneath her feet, the sky overhead, the ordinary life happening all around her. And in that walking, without seeking anything, she began to notice something strange. Moments of peace would arise unexpectedly. A feeling of completeness would wash over her for no reason. She was not doing anything to create these moments. They simply appeared when she stopped trying to make them happen. When she finally reached her village, everything looked different. The rice fields she had worked her whole life seemed beautiful in a way she had never noticed. The faces of her neighbors, the sounds of children playing, the smell of cooking fires in the evening, all of it felt vivid and alive. She went to see the village elder, the woman who had once told her that planting rice and feeding children was life. The old woman looked at her with knowing eyes. "You did not find your great teacher," she said. It was not a question. "I found something else," Hana replied. "I found that I was looking so hard I could not see what was in front of me. I traveled all that way to learn that I needed to stop traveling." The elder nodded. "There is a teacher in this village. He has been here your whole life, but he does not announce himself. He does not gather students or give lectures. He simply lives quietly and waits for people to stop searching long enough to see him." Hana was surprised. "Who is he?" "The old farmer who tends the fields at the eastern edge of the village. His name is Wen." Hana felt the ground shift beneath her. Master Wen. The great teacher she had traveled so far to find had been in her own village all along. She had walked past his fields countless times without a second glance. She found him the next day, working among his vegetables. He looked up as she approached, and she recognized something in his eyes. A stillness, a presence. The quality she had been seeking in distant cities was here, in this ordinary old man she had known her whole life but never really seen. "You went looking for me," he said simply. "And now you have found me by coming home. Why did you never say anything? Why did you let me search so far when you were right here?" He smiled and returned to his weeding. "Would you have believed me if I had told you? Would you have trusted a simple farmer in your own village to have what you sought? The searching was necessary. It taught you that what you wanted could not be found by searching. Now you are ready to receive what I could have told you years ago, but which you could not have heard." Hannah knelt beside him in the soil. What would you have told me? That the meaning you seek is not hidden somewhere else. It is here, in this moment, in the feel of earth beneath your hands, in the growing of plants, in the simple act of being alive and aware. You do not need to find it. You only need to stop overlooking it. He handed her a small trowel. The teaching is not complicated, but we make it complicated by searching for something complicated. We travel far when we need to arrive where we are. We seek in the extraordinary when the ordinary is enough. Hannah worked beside him in silence. The sun was warm on her back. The soil was cool and alive between her fingers. And in that simple moment, she understood what all her seeking had been unable to find. It had been here all along. She had just been too busy looking elsewhere to see it. This story reveals the central paradox of seeking. Hannah's search was not wrong. It was necessary, but it could only take her so far. The final step was not more searching, but the release of searching. She had to stop looking outward long enough to recognize what was present all along. Zen masters often teach through this kind of misdirection. They send students on long journeys, give them impossible riddles, let them struggle and search until they are exhausted. This is not cruelty. It is compassion. Some things cannot be told directly. They can only be discovered when we have worn out all our other strategies. The Buddha taught that we suffer because we do not see things as they are. We overlay reality with our concepts, our desires, our expectations. The search for truth is often just another overlay. We imagine awakening as something exotic, something far away, something different from ordinary life. This imagination keeps us from recognizing the awakeness that is already here, in this breath, in this moment. Buddhism shows us that the spiritual path is not about acquiring something new. It is about removing the obstructions that keep us from seeing what is already present. The searching mind is one of those obstructions. It assumes that what we seek is not here. It keeps us oriented toward the future, toward the elsewhere, away from the only place where presence can be found. Let us explore another story that reveals more of this truth. In a town famous for its musicians, there lived a young flute player named Sen who had studied since childhood. His technique was excellent. His teachers praised his skill. When he played alone, practicing in his room or walking through the forest, the music flowed from him naturally, effortlessly, as if the flute were playing itself. But Sen had a problem that caused him great frustration. Whenever he performed for others, his playing changed. The ease disappeared. His fingers grew stiff and uncertain. Notes that came naturally in private became difficult in public. The music that had flowed so freely would stumble and hesitate. He tried everything to overcome this difficulty. He practiced more hours each day, drilling the difficult passages until his fingers were sore. He performed for small groups of friends, hoping to grow accustomed to being watched. He told himself there was nothing to fear, that the audience wanted him to succeed. None of it helped. The moment he felt eyes upon him, the natural flow vanished. His teacher, an old musician named Cho, watched this struggle with patient concern. She had seen this problem in other students. She knew that no amount of practice would solve it, because the problem was not in the fingers. One afternoon, she asked Sen to play for her. Just the two of them, in her small teaching room. Sen raised the flute to his lips and began. Almost immediately, the familiar tightness appeared. His shoulders tensed. His breath grew shallow. He was watching himself play, judging each note, worried about what his teacher was thinking. The music that emerged was technically correct, but lifeless. Cho listened until he finished, then sat quietly for a moment. "Tell me what was happening inside you while you played." Sen thought about it. "I was trying to play well. I was watching my fingers, making sure they hit the right positions. I was listening to the notes, checking if they sounded correct. I was thinking about what you might be noticing, what mistakes you might hear. And when you play alone in the forest, do you do all this?" "No. When I am alone, I just play. I do not think about it so much." Cho nodded. "This is your difficulty. When you play alone, you are simply playing. When others are present, you are doing something else. You are trying to play well. You are seeking a good performance. This seeking gets between you and the music." She picked up her own flute, an old instrument worn smooth by decades of handling. "Watch me. I'm going to try very hard to play well for you." She raised the flute and began. Her face was tight with concentration. Her shoulders were tense. She played the notes correctly, but there was something forced about the music, something stiff and effortful. Then she stopped and took a breath. Her shoulders dropped. Her face relaxed. "Now I am going to forget about playing well. I am just going to play." She began again. The same notes, the same melody, but everything was different. The music breathed. It flowed. It seemed to arise from somewhere deeper than technique, somewhere that had nothing to do with trying. "Do you hear the difference?" she asked when she finished. "Yes, but I do not understand how you did it. How do you stop trying when you know someone is listening?" Cho set down her flute carefully. "The trying is the problem. When you try to play well, you separate yourself from the playing. Part of you performs. Another part watches and judges. You become divided against yourself. The music cannot flow through a divided musician." She looked at him with kind, direct eyes. "You are seeking a good performance. This seeking creates tension. The tension blocks the natural flow. The more you want to play well, the less well you play. This is the trap you are caught in. Then what do I do? How can I perform without wanting to perform well?" "You cannot want to not want," Cho said with a slight smile. "That is just more seeking. Instead, you must give your attention to something else. When you play alone in the forest, where is your attention?" Sen considered. "On the music itself, on the sounds, on the feeling of the breath moving through the flute." "Exactly. Your attention is on what is happening, not on how it is being judged. When you perform for others, your attention shifts to yourself, to how you are doing, to what others think. This shift is what ruins the playing." She handed him his flute. "Try something. Play for me again. But this time, do not try to play well. Do not think about me listening. Put all your attention on the sound itself. Listen to the music as if you were the audience, not the performer. Be curious about what sounds will emerge, as if you did not know." Sen was skeptical, but he raised the flute and tried. At first, the old habits pulled at him. He felt himself starting to watch, to judge, to try. But he kept returning his attention to the sound, to the feel of the breath, to simple curiosity about the next note. Something began to shift. The tension in his shoulders eased. His fingers found their positions without his directing them. The music began to flow in a way it never had when he was trying to make it flow. It was not perfect. He lost the thread several times when the trying mind crept back in. But there were moments, real moments, when the music played itself through him. When he finished, Cho was smiling. You see, the seeking was the obstacle. When you stopped seeking a good performance and simply attended to the music, the good performance arose by itself. This is the paradox you must learn to live with. The harder you try, the worse you play. The less you seek, the more you find. Sen practiced this new way of playing over the following months. It was not easy. The habit of trying, of seeking, of wanting to do well was deeply ingrained. But gradually, he learned to recognize when his attention had shifted from the music to himself. He learned to gently return to simple presence, to curiosity, to the sound itself. His performances began to change. Not overnight, and not perfectly. There were still times when the trying mind took over and the music suffered. But, more and more often, he was able to get out of his own way, to let the music play itself, to stop seeking and simply be present for what was happening. Years later, when students asked him how to overcome performance anxiety, he would remember what Cho had taught him. You cannot play well by trying to play well. The trying gets in the way. Give your attention to the music itself, not to how you are doing. Listen with curiosity instead of judgment. The good performance you seek will come when you stop seeking it. This is the secret that is not a secret. Everyone knows it, but knowing it is not enough. You must discover it for yourself, again and again, in each moment of playing. This story shows us how seeking interferes with finding in practical ways. Sen's desire to play well was understandable. But that very desire created the tension that prevented him from playing well. The seeking blocked what it sought. Zen teaches that this pattern appears in many areas of life. We try to relax, and the trying keeps us tense. We try to fall asleep, and the trying keeps us awake. We try to be present, and the trying takes us out of presence. The mind that seeks cannot rest, and many of the things we seek require rest. The Buddha spoke of this as the trap of we grasp at understanding and confuse ourselves further. The grasping mind is always slightly ahead of the present moment, reaching for what is not yet here. And what we seek is always only here, in this moment, where the grasping mind cannot reach. Buddhism offers a different approach. Instead of trying harder, we learn to try less. Instead of seeking more intensely, we practice releasing. This is not passivity or giving up. It is a different kind of effort, an effort of allowing rather than forcing. We learn to get out of our own way and let what wants to happen, happen. Cho taught Sen to shift his attention from the self that was performing to the music that was unfolding. This shift is at the heart of all spiritual practice. We move from self-consciousness to simple consciousness, from seeking to being, from trying to arrive somewhere to being fully where we are. The search is necessary, It brings us to the place where we can finally release it. But the releasing is what allows us to find. Take a gentle breath now. Let your body soften. Notice that you are not seeking anything in this moment. You are simply here, resting. It takes a particular kind of bravery to stop searching. We are taught from childhood that effort is the answer to every problem. That if we want something, we must pursue it. That giving up is failure. So we keep moving, keep seeking, keep pushing forward even when the pushing brings us no closer to what we want. Zen teaches us that stopping is not the same as giving up. There is a quality of stillness that is not defeat, but arrival. Not passivity, but presence. When we have searched long enough and hard enough to understand that searching cannot give us what we seek, stopping becomes the most courageous act available. It is the willingness to be where we are without needing to be somewhere else. The Buddha discovered this beneath the Bodhi tree. He had spent years in extreme seeking, pushing his body and mind to their limits. He had tried every path, consulted every teacher, practiced every technique. And when none of it worked, he stopped. He sat down. He let go of the striving. And in that stillness, what he had been seeking finally found him. Buddhism shows us that this stopping is not the end of the journey, but its fulfillment. We do not stop because we have failed. We stop because we have arrived. The place we were trying to reach is not ahead of us. It is here, where we stand, where we have always been standing. When we cease our frantic motion, we can finally notice the ground beneath our feet. Let us explore a story that shows this truth. There was a man named Jin who had been walking for 20 years. He had left his village as a young man, driven by a feeling he could not name. Something was missing. Something important was waiting for him somewhere out in the world. He was certain of this, though he could not have said what it was or how he would recognize it when he found it. He walked through many lands. He crossed deserts where the sand stretched to every horizon. He climbed mountains where the air grew thin and cold. He passed through cities filled with people and through forests where he saw no one for weeks at a time. He worked when he needed money, rested when his body demanded it, and then continued on. In the early years, the walking felt purposeful. Each new place might be the one. Each stranger he met might have the answer he was looking for. He felt the pull of possibility ahead of him, drawing him forward, promising that the next valley or the next village would finally reveal what he sought. But as the years passed, the purpose began to fade. He had seen so many places that they blurred together. He had met so many people that their faces merged in his memory. The pull ahead of him grew weaker, but the habit of walking remained. He no longer knew why he was moving, but he did not know how to stop. By his 20th year of wandering, Jin was tired in a way that sleep could not touch. His body still moved. His feet still carried him forward. But something inside had grown heavy and dull. The feeling that had once driven him, that sense of something missing, had not gone away. If anything, it had deepened. 20 years of searching had brought him no closer to filling the hollow place. One evening, as autumn turned the leaves to gold and red, Jin found himself on a small road that wound through farmland. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the fields. He had no destination in mind. He was simply walking because walking was what he did. His legs began to ache. His pack, though light, felt heavy on his shoulders. He looked ahead and saw more road, more fields, more of the same. And something in him finally broke. He sat down. Not at an inn or a temple or anyone's home. Just there, by the side of the road, among the tall grass and the last wildflowers of the season. He sat down because he could not take another step. Because 20 years of walking had led him nowhere. Because he was too tired to pretend anymore that the next place would be different. The sun continued to set. The shadows lengthened. Jin sat and watched the light change, feeling nothing in particular, wanting nothing. The hollow place was still there, but he no longer had the energy to run from it or fill it. He simply sat with it, the emptiness and the exhaustion and the fading light. He did not know how long he sat there. The sky grew dark. Stars appeared. The air turned cool. Still, he did not move. There was nowhere to go. Nothing to seek. Just this, the night and the grass and the great stillness that had descended when he finally stopped running. And in that stillness, something began to shift. It was subtle at first. A softening somewhere inside him. A releasing he had not known he was capable of. The hollow place was still there, but it no longer felt like a problem to be solved. It felt more like a space, an openness, room for something he had not allowed before. He noticed the stars more clearly than he had in years. He felt the grass beneath him, the cool earth, the gentle movement of the night air. He heard small sounds he would normally have walked right past. The world was vivid in a way it had not been for a long time. Perhaps ever. He realized that in all his years of walking, he had rarely been where he was. His body had moved through countless landscapes, but his mind had always been elsewhere, looking ahead to the next place, wondering what he would find there. He had never simply arrived. He had never been fully present for any of the places he had passed through. And now, sitting by a road he would have walked past without a second thought, he was finally here. Not seeking, not running, not hoping the next moment would be better than this one. Just here, in the darkness, in the stillness, in the strange peace that had found him when he stopped looking for it. A farmer found him the next morning, still sitting in the same spot. The man was old, his face weathered by years of outdoor work. He looked at Jin with curiosity but not alarm. "Are you lost?" the farmer asked. Jin considered the question. "I have been lost for 20 years. I think I may have just been found." The farmer did not seem to find this strange. He sat down beside Jin, setting down the tools he had been carrying. "I have lived on this land my whole life," he said. "I was born in the house just over that hill. I will probably die there too. Sometimes I wondered if I was missing something by staying in one place. Other men traveled. They saw things I never saw. I thought perhaps they knew something I did not know." He looked out at the fields, golden now in the morning light. "But over the years, I noticed something. The travelers who passed through, they always seemed to be looking for something. They would ask about the road ahead, the next town, the next opportunity. They were never really here, even when they were standing right in front of me. Their eyes were always on the horizon." He turned to look at Jin directly. "You have different eyes this morning. You are actually here. Whatever you were looking for, I think you found it. Not out there somewhere, but right here, when you finally stopped to sit down." Jin nodded slowly. He understood what the farmer was saying because he could feel it in himself. Something had shifted in the night. The endless seeking had worn itself out, and in the space it left behind, a different way of being had emerged. He was not a traveler anymore. He was simply a man sitting by a road, present for the morning light on the fields. "I was afraid to stop," Jin admitted. "For 20 years I kept moving because I did not know what would happen if I stood still. I thought I would feel the emptiness more strongly. I thought I would have to face something I had been running from." The farmer nodded as if this made sense to him. "And what did you find when you stopped?" "Not what I expected. The emptiness was there, but it was not the enemy I had imagined. It was more like a room I had never entered. Uncomfortable at first, but also spacious. Room to breathe. Room to simply be." The farmer smiled. "The things we run from are usually smaller than we imagine. We make them large by running. When we turn and face them, they often shrink to something we can hold." He stood up and brushed the dust from his clothes. "Come, I will make you breakfast. You look like a man who has not eaten well in some time." He stayed with the farmer for several months. Not because he was seeking anything the farmer had, but because there was no urgency to leave. He helped with the harvest, learned the rhythms of the land, ate simple meals in the farmhouse kitchen. And each day, he practiced what he had discovered in that night of stillness. Being where he was. Arriving in the present moment instead of always looking ahead. The hollow place did not disappear entirely. He still felt it sometimes, that old sense of something missing. But it no longer drove him. He could feel it and remain where he was. He could acknowledge it without letting it push him back onto the road. Eventually, he did move on. Not because he was seeking something, but because it was time. The farmer understood. He gave Jin a small bundle of food and a simple blessing. "You will walk again," the farmer said. "But you are not the same man who sat down in my field. The walking will be different now." And it was. Jin traveled for many more years, but not in the old way. He was not running from emptiness or toward fulfillment. He was simply moving through the world, present for each step, arriving wherever he was. The journey had not ended, but the desperate search was over. This story shows us what becomes possible when we find the courage to stop. Jin's 20 years of seeking had not been wasted. They had brought him to the point where stopping was possible. They had exhausted the part of him that believed the answer lay somewhere ahead. When that exhaustion finally overcame him, a different kind of knowing could emerge. Zen teaches us that the spiritual path often looks like this. We seek and strive and push ourselves forward, and then one day we stop. Not because we have found what we were looking for, but because we have worn out our capacity to keep looking. And in that stopping, we discover that what we sought was never ahead of us. It was here all along, hidden by our constant motion. The Buddha called this realization the end of wandering. Not that we never move or change, but that we cease the inner restlessness that keeps us from being present wherever we are. We can travel the world and remain at home. We can engage fully with life without the desperate seeking that had driven us before. Buddhism shows us that stopping takes courage because we are so afraid of what we might find in the stillness. We keep moving partly because movement feels productive, but also because it keeps us from having to face ourselves. When we stop, we have no more distractions. We are left with whatever we have been running from. But if we can stay stopped, if we can resist the urge to immediately start seeking again, we may find that what we feared was not so terrible. The emptiness we ran from becomes a spaciousness we can rest in. Take a gentle breath now. Feel yourself already stopped, already still, already resting in this moment. There is a teaching at the heart of Zen that seems almost too simple to be true. It says that what we are seeking, we already have. The peace we long for is already present. The wholeness we chase is already here. We are not broken beings who must be fixed. We are complete beings who have forgotten our completeness. The Buddha taught that our true nature is not something we must create or earn. It is what we are when we stop adding layers of confusion on top of it. Like the sun behind clouds, it has never gone anywhere. The clouds may be thick, the sky may seem dark, but the sun continues to shine. Our seeking is often just more clouds, more layers between us and what was never lost. Buddhism calls this our original nature, our Buddha nature. It is not something special or rare. It is the most ordinary thing in the world, so ordinary that we overlook it constantly. We look for awakening in extraordinary experiences, in peak moments, in special states of consciousness. Meanwhile, the simple awareness that is reading these words, that is breathing this breath, that is resting here right now, is itself what we have been seeking. Zen masters point to this again and again. They use words and stories and sometimes silence, all trying to help us see what is already in plain sight. The recognition they point toward is not complicated. It is simply noticing what has always been here, what we have always been, beneath the noise of seeking and the fog of confusion. Let us explore a story that shows this truth. In a mountain village where the winters were long and the summers brief, there lived a man named Tahoe who had left home as a young man to seek wisdom. He had felt the hollow place inside him, the sense that something essential was missing, and he had gone out into the world to find what would fill it. He traveled for many years. He studied with teachers in distant cities. He practiced meditation in remote monasteries. He read the ancient texts and debated their meanings with scholars. He accumulated knowledge and experiences, always hoping the next teaching would be the one that finally completed him. Some of what he learned was valuable. He gained discipline and focus. He developed compassion for others who were suffering. He understood things about the mind and about life that he could never have grasped had he stayed in his small village. The years of seeking had not been wasted, but the hollow place remained. No matter how much wisdom he gathered, no matter how many teachers praised his understanding, something still felt incomplete. He began to wonder if the problem was with him. Perhaps he was simply incapable of the realization others seemed to find. Perhaps the peace he sought was not meant for someone like him. As the years passed, Tahoe grew tired. The seeking that had once felt like adventure now felt like burden. He had been away from home for over 30 years. His parents had died while he was traveling. The village of his childhood existed now only in memory. One autumn, feeling old in a way that had nothing to do with his body, Tahoe decided to return home. He did not expect to find anything there. He simply wanted to see the place where he had started before he was too old to make the journey. The road back was long. He walked through landscapes that had once been familiar and now seemed strange. He passed through towns where he had stopped as a young man, full of hope and questions. Now he passed through them quietly, expecting nothing, seeking nothing. The fire of his search had burned down to embers. When he finally reached his village, he barely recognized it. The houses seemed smaller than he remembered. The streets he had walked as a child were narrower, shorter. The great mountain that had loomed over his childhood was just a mountain. Everything had shrunk, or perhaps he had simply grown. He found the house where he had been born. It was occupied by a family he did not know. They looked at him with curiosity when he explained who he was, then invited him to sit in the small garden where he had played as a boy. Tahoe sat on a wooden bench beneath an old pine tree. He remembered this tree. He had climbed it as a child, had sat beneath it on summer evenings, had carved his name into its bark. The carving was still there, weathered and grown over, but visible if you knew where to look. He sat for a long time, feeling the afternoon sun on his face, listening to the sounds of the village, smelling the familiar scents of pine and wood smoke, and the particular quality of mountain air he had not smelled in 30 years. And something strange began to happen. The hollow place, that old companion that had driven him around the world, began to feel different. It was still there, but it no longer felt like emptiness. It felt more like space, openness, room for the afternoon light and the pine scent and the distant sound of children playing. He realized he was not seeking anything. For the first time in 30 years, he was simply present, not looking ahead to what might complete him, not analyzing his experience for signs of enlightenment, just sitting on a bench in the village where he was born, an old man returning home. A neighbor who remembered his family came to speak with him. She was elderly now, white-haired and slow, but her eyes were sharp. "You went away to find something," she said. It was not a question. "Yes." "And did you find it?" Tahoe considered the question carefully. He thought about all the teachers and teachings, all the practices and insights, all the years of seeking. "I found many things," he said, "but not the thing I was looking for." The old woman nodded as if this did not surprise her. She sat down beside him on the bench, moving slowly, her joints stiff with age. "My husband was like you," she said. He felt that something was missing. He talked about leaving to find it. But we had children, and the farm needed tending, and there was never a good time to go. He spent his whole life here, doing ordinary things, working the land, raising our children, growing old. She looked at Tahoe with something like gentle amusement. "A few years before he died, he told me something. He said he had finally found what he had been looking for." I asked him where he found it. "Do you know what he said?" Tahoe shook his head. He said, "It was here all along. I just stopped looking for it somewhere else." She let the words settle between them. He did not travel anywhere. He did not study with teachers or read ancient books. He just lived his life, and somewhere in the living of it, he found what he needed. Or maybe he realized he had never lost it. Tahoe felt something shift in his chest, a loosening, a releasing of something he had carried for so long he had forgotten he was carrying it. "I have spent 30 years searching," he said quietly. "I have gone everywhere looking for what was here all along." "Perhaps," the old woman said, "or perhaps you needed to go everywhere before you could see what was here. The searching was part of finding." You could not have sat on this bench as a young man and understood what you understand now. You had to leave so you could return. She stood up slowly, preparing to go about her day. But now you are home. And what you were looking for, whatever it was, is here. It has always been here. It was waiting for you to stop looking elsewhere. Tahoe stayed in the village. He found a small house at the edge of town, not far from where he had been born. He lived simply, helping neighbors when they needed help, sitting in his garden in the evenings, watching the seasons turn. The hollow place did not disappear, but it no longer drove him. It had become something else, something he could rest in rather than run from. The seeking had stopped, and in the stopping, he found he already had what he had been seeking. He thought often about what the old woman had said, that her husband had found everything without going anywhere, that the searching might have been necessary, but not in the way Tahoe had thought. He had believed he was accumulating something, building toward realization, but what had actually happened was a wearing away. The seeking had exhausted itself, and in its exhaustion, what was already present could finally be seen. He began to notice things he had overlooked in all his years of seeking. The way morning light came through his window, the taste of simple food eaten slowly, the sound of rain on the roof at night. These were not new experiences. They had been happening his whole life. But he had always been too busy looking for something else to fully receive them. He realized that presence itself was what he had been seeking. Not a special state, not a mystical experience, just the simple act of being fully here with whatever was happening. This had been available to him at every moment of his life. But he had been so convinced that what he needed lay somewhere ahead that he had missed it entirely. The villagers grew accustomed to seeing the old traveler sitting in his garden or walking slowly through the streets. Some thought he was strange. Others sensed something in him they could not name, a quality of settledness that made them want to sit with him a while. One morning, sitting beneath the pine tree in the garden of his childhood home, Tahoe laughed out loud. The family who lived there now looked at him curiously through the window. He waved to reassure them he was fine. He was laughing because he finally understood the joke. He had traveled the world looking for home and had been home the entire time. He had sought completion and had always been complete. The seeking itself had been the only thing missing, the only thing that had made him feel incomplete. When the seeking stopped, completeness remained. It had never been anywhere else. This story shows us the beautiful irony of the spiritual search. Tahoe needed to seek in order to stop seeking. He needed to exhaust the outward journey before he could arrive where he had always been. The 30 years were not wasted, but they did not give him what he sought. They simply wore down his belief that what he sought was somewhere else. Zen teaches that this is often how awakening happens. We search until we cannot search anymore. We try every path, consult every teacher, accumulate every insight, and then, exhausted, we stop. We come home, and we find that home was never lost. We were simply too busy looking elsewhere to notice it. The Buddha spoke of this as recognizing our true nature, not creating it or achieving it or earning it, just recognizing what has always been here. Like a wave searching the ocean for water, we seek what we already are. The search ends not when we find something new, but when we see clearly what was present all along. Buddhism shows us that we are already whole. Not will be whole someday, not can become whole with enough effort. Already whole, right now, as we are. This does not mean we have no room to grow or learn or change. But our essential nature, the awareness that is reading these words, is already complete. It does not need fixing or improving. It needs only to be recognized. Let us explore another story that reveals more of this truth. In a valley known for its fertile soil and abundant harvests, there lived an old gardener named Shin who had never left his small plot of land. He had been born in the cottage beside his garden. He had worked the same soil his whole life. He knew every corner of his few acres the way other men knew the faces of their families. People sometimes felt sorry for him. Travelers passing through would look at his simple life and assume he must feel trapped. Merchants would tell him about the great cities they had seen, the wonders of distant lands, the excitement of lives larger than his small garden. They assumed he must wish for something more. But Shin did not seem to wish for anything. He would listen to their stories with genuine interest, ask questions about the places they had been, then return to his weeding or pruning with a contentment they found puzzling. He did not seem diminished by his small life. If anything, he seemed more at peace than the travelers who had seen so much more of the world. Over the years, word spread about the old gardener who radiated a particular kind of stillness. People began to visit him, not to buy vegetables but to sit in his presence. They came with questions about life and meaning and how to find peace. Shin would usually shrug and offer them tea, unsure what they expected from him. One autumn, a young man named Kei arrived at Shin's garden. He had been traveling for several years, seeking wisdom, feeling the familiar ache of something missing. He had heard about the peaceful gardener and had come to see for himself. He found Shin kneeling in the dirt, carefully transplanting seedlings. The old man looked up and smiled, but did not stop his work. "I have come a long way to see you," Kei said. "People say you have found something, a peace that others cannot find. I want to know your secret." Shin continued his transplanting, his old hands gentle with the delicate roots. "I have no secret," he said. "I'm just a gardener. But people say you never feel the restlessness that troubles others. You never feel that something is missing. How is this possible when you have seen so little of the world?" Shin sat back on his heels and looked at the young man. His eyes were clear and kind. "Why do you assume that seeing more would help?" Kei was taken aback. "Because there must be something out there. Some teacher, some teaching, some experience that would finally make sense of everything. How can you find it if you never look?" Shin picked up another seedling and examined its roots. "When I was young, I felt what you feel. The sense that something was missing. The belief that it must be somewhere else. I watched travelers pass through and envied them. I imagined the things they must be learning, the peace they must be finding in all those other places." He placed the seedling carefully in its new hole, pressing the soil around it. "But I could not leave. My parents were old and needed care. The garden needed tending. There was always a reason to stay." He smiled slightly. "At first I resented this. I felt trapped in a small life while others were free to search. What changed?" Shin was quiet for a moment, finishing with the seedling before answering. "I stopped believing that what I sought was somewhere else. It happened gradually. I would be working in the garden, pulling weeds or watering plants, and I would notice moments of complete peace. Not peace I had achieved or earned, just peace that was there when I was not looking for it. He gestured around the garden, at the rows of vegetables, the fruit trees along the fence, the flowers nodding in the autumn breeze. I began to pay attention to these moments. I noticed they came when I was fully present with what I was doing, when I was not wishing I was somewhere else, not imagining some better life, just here, with the soil and the plants and the work. He looked at Kay directly. The peace you are looking for is not in some other place. It is in presence itself, in being fully where you are. I found it here because here is where I stopped looking elsewhere. You could find it anywhere if you did the same. Kay sat down on the grass beside the garden bed. He wanted to argue. Everything in him believed that peace must be earned through effort, found through searching, achieved through acquiring wisdom. The idea that it was already available, right here, seemed too simple. But I feel incomplete, he said. There is an emptiness in me. How can I be whole when I feel so empty? Shin nodded with understanding. The emptiness is real. I felt it too. But I learned something about it. The emptiness is not a sign that something is missing. It is the space in which everything appears. It is not a hole to be filled, but a room to be lived in. He reached over and picked up a clay pot, waiting to receive a seedling. Look at this pot. Is it broken because it is empty? Is it incomplete? Or is its emptiness what makes it useful? You could not put a plant in a pot that was already full. He set the pot down gently. The emptiness you feel is not your enemy. It is your nature. It is the openness that allows experience to happen. When you stop trying to fill it and simply rest in it, you may find it is not empty at all. It is full of everything that is happening right now, full of this moment, full of being alive. Kay stayed with Shin for several weeks, helping in the garden, sharing simple meals, sitting in the quiet evenings. He did not find what he expected. There were no great teachings, no special techniques, no dramatic insights, but something shifted in him nonetheless. Working alongside the old gardener, being present with simple tasks, he began to notice what Shin had described. Moments of peace that arose from nowhere. A completeness that had nothing to do with acquiring or achieving. The hollow place was still there, but it felt different. Less like a wound and more like a home. One evening, as they sat watching the sun set behind the mountains, Kay asked Shin how he had come to trust this simple peace. How he had stopped doubting that there was something more he should be seeking. Shin considered the question, while the sky turned from gold to pink to purple. I stopped because I had no choice, he said finally. I could not leave, so I had to find what I needed here. And when I stopped looking elsewhere, I found it was not hidden at all. It was right in front of me. It had always been right in front of me. He pulled his worn jacket closer against the evening chill. Perhaps I was fortunate that I could not travel. The ones who can travel sometimes travel forever. They keep believing the next place will be different. They never stay still long enough to discover that stillness is what they were seeking. Kay thought about his own travels. The constant movement. The hope that accompanied each new destination. The disappointment that always eventually followed. He had been running toward something, but also running from something. The stillness had always felt like failure. I was afraid to stop, he admitted. I thought if I stopped seeking, I would have to face the emptiness. I thought it would swallow me. Shin smiled gently. And now? Now I am not sure. The emptiness is still there. But sitting here with you, doing simple things, I feel more at peace than I felt in all my searching. I do not understand it. There is nothing to understand, Shin said. Understanding is more seeking, more trying to grasp something with the mind. Peace does not need to be understood. It just needs to be allowed. On the day he left, Kei thanked Shin for what he had taught him. The old gardener shook his head. I taught you nothing. I only showed you what you already had. The peace you found here was not mine to give. It was yours all along. You simply stopped looking elsewhere long enough to notice it. He handed Kei a small packet of seeds from his garden. Plant these when you find a place to stop. Not as a way to find peace, but as a way to practice presence. Watch them grow. Give them what they need. Be with them without wanting them to be anything other than what they are. This is all the teaching I have to offer. Kei traveled on, as he felt he must. But he was not the same man who had arrived. He no longer sought peace as though it were hidden somewhere ahead. He practiced what Shin had shown him, being present wherever he was, resting in the emptiness instead of running from it. The search continued in a sense, but the desperation was gone. He had discovered that what he sought traveled with him. It had never been anywhere else. Zen teaches that the recognition of wholeness does not require special conditions. Shin found it in a small garden. Others have found it in monasteries, in marketplaces, in the midst of ordinary lives. What matters is not where we are, but how we are. When we stop insisting that completeness lies elsewhere, we can recognize it here. The Buddha taught that all beings possess Buddha nature. Not some beings, not the special or the advanced or the spiritually gifted. All beings, including you, including the person listening to these words right now. This nature is not something to be attained. It is what we are before we add anything, before we seek anything, before we believe that something is missing. Buddhism shows us that the hollow place is not a flaw in our being. It is an essential part of our nature, the spaciousness in which experience unfolds. When we make peace with it, when we stop trying to fill it with achievements or acquisitions or even spiritual experiences, we discover it was never really empty. It was simply waiting for us to rest in it. Take a gentle breath now. Feel yourself complete in this moment. Not because you have achieved anything or found anything or become anything special, simply because you are here. We have traveled far together tonight. We have explored the hollow place, the outward search, the weight of wanting. We have seen how seeking can become its own obstacle, how stopping opens doors that striving keeps closed. We have glimpsed the truth that what we seek is already here, already present, already who we are. Now we come to something important, something that ties all of this together. Zen teaches us that the feeling of something missing, the restlessness that brought you here tonight, is not a problem to be solved. It is the beginning of awakening. It is the first stirring of something in you that knows there is more to life than what you have been settling for. This knowing is precious. It is the seed from which everything grows. The Buddha honored this restlessness in himself. He did not dismiss it as weakness or ingratitude. He followed it. He let it guide him away from a comfortable life towards something truer. The hollow place was his teacher, showing him that palaces and pleasures could not satisfy what was really asking to be met. Buddhism shows us that every seeker begins with this same feeling. The sense that something is missing is the beginning of the path, not evidence that we have strayed from it. It is what brings us to the teachings, to the practices, to the quiet moments when we finally stop and listen. Without it, we would never begin. Without it, we would remain asleep, comfortable, but not truly alive. Tonight, whatever brought you here, whatever restlessness or longing led you to these words, honor it. It is your own wisdom calling you home. Let us explore a story that shows this truth. In a village where the river met the sea, there lived a woman named May who had felt different from others for as long as she could remember. As a child, she would sit apart from the other children, looking at the horizon, feeling a pull towards something she could not name. Her mother would find her staring at the stars and ask what she was thinking. May could never explain. There were no words for the feeling inside her. As she grew older, the feeling did not fade. If anything, it deepened. She went through the motions of ordinary life. She learned her family's trade, mending fishing nets. She made friends, attended festivals, did what was expected of her. But underneath it all, the restlessness continued. A quiet voice asking if this was all there was. A longing for something more that she could not define. She told no one about this feeling. She was afraid they would not understand. She was afraid they would tell her she was ungrateful, that she had a good life and should be content with it. So she kept the restlessness hidden, carrying it like a secret weight. By the time she reached her 30th year, the weight had grown heavy. The gap between her outer life and her inner experience had widened until she felt like two people. One who smiled and worked and said the right things. Another who lay awake at night, aching for something that had no name. One autumn, an old woman came to the village. She was a traveler, a storyteller, who wandered from place to place, sharing tales and teachings. The villagers welcomed her, curious about the world beyond their small corner of the coast. May listened to the old woman's stories with the others. Tales of distant lands, of seekers and sages, of ordinary people who had found extraordinary peace. Something in these stories stirred the restlessness in May more strongly than ever. She found herself weeping without knowing why. After the gathering, when others had gone home, May lingered. The old woman noticed and invited her to sit. "You carry something heavy," the old woman said. It was not a question. May felt the walls she had built begin to crumble. "I have always felt that something is missing," she admitted. "Even when my life is good, even when I have everything I need, I feel incomplete. I have never told anyone. I was afraid they would think me ungrateful or strange." The old woman smiled gently. "You are not strange. You are awake. Or rather, you are beginning to awaken. The feeling you describe is the first sign that something in you is ready to grow." May was confused. "But the feeling is painful. It makes me unhappy with my life. How can that be a good thing?" "Consider the seed buried in dark soil," the old woman said. "Before it can grow, something in it must stir. It must feel the urge to push upward toward light it has never seen. This stirring might feel like discomfort to the seed. It might feel like restlessness, like something is wrong with the comfortable darkness it has known. She picked up a small stone and turned it in her weathered hands. But the stirring is not a problem. It is life itself, calling the seed to become what it is meant to become. If the seed never felt that restlessness, it would remain forever in the dark. It would never know the sun. May felt something shift in her chest. You are saying my restlessness is natural? That it is not a sign that something is wrong with me? I am saying it is the most right thing about you. It is your deepest wisdom, telling you that you are meant for more than just going through the motions. Most people push this feeling away. They distract themselves. They stay busy. They tell themselves they should be satisfied with what they have. But the feeling does not go away. It waits, patiently, for them to listen. The old woman set down the stone and looked at May directly. You have been listening all your life, even when you did not know what you were hearing. The restlessness has been your teacher, showing you that ordinary satisfactions cannot touch what is really asking to be met. This is not a curse. It is a gift. It is the beginning of a journey that most people never take because they are too afraid to feel what you have been feeling. May sat with this for a long moment. All her life, she had treated the restlessness as an enemy, as evidence that something was broken in her. Now this stranger was telling her it was the most precious thing she carried. "What do I do with it?" she asked. "How do I follow where it leads?" The old woman laughed softly. "You are already following. You stayed behind tonight while others went home. You spoke the truth that you have hidden for years. You are asking questions that take courage to ask. The journey has already begun." She stood up slowly, preparing to move on to wherever her wandering would take her next. Do not try to fix the restlessness or make it go away. Let it guide you. Let it ask its questions. Let it show you what needs attention in your life. It knows things your thinking mind does not know. It feels the direction of home even when your eyes cannot see the path. She placed her hand briefly on May's shoulder. The feeling of something missing is not the problem. It is the solution. It is what will save you from a life half-lived. Honor it. Follow it. It has been waiting a long time for you to trust it. May watched the old woman walk away into the darkness. She sat alone by the dying fire for a long time, feeling the restlessness in her chest. But it felt different now. Less like a wound and more like a compass. Less like evidence of brokenness and more like a call. In the days that followed, May began to live differently. She stopped trying to push the feeling away. When it arose, she let it be there, let it speak. She began to ask what it was pointing toward, what it was asking for. She did not have answers yet, but she was listening in a way she never had before. She noticed that the restlessness grew stronger in certain moments. When she was doing work that felt meaningless. When she was pretending to be happy in situations that left her cold. When she was living according to expectations that were not truly hers. The emptiness seemed to be showing her where her life was out of alignment, where she was betraying something true in herself. She began to make small changes. She spent more time alone by the sea, letting the waves speak to her in their own way. She sought out the elders in her village who seemed to carry some inner stillness, and she asked them questions she had been too afraid to ask before. She began to follow the threads of curiosity that had always been there, but which she had ignored in favor of doing what was expected. The outer circumstances of her life did not change immediately. She still mended nets. She still lived in the same small house. But something inside had shifted. She was no longer fighting herself. She was no longer ashamed of the longing that had always lived in her. She was following it, gently, one small step at a time. Years later, when May had found her own peace and become someone others came to for guidance, she would remember that night by the fire. She would remember how the old woman had reframed everything, turning her deepest pain into her greatest gift. She would tell seekers who came to her the same thing, that their restlessness was not a problem, that it was the beginning of everything, that the feeling of something missing was their own wisdom, calling them toward wholeness. "Do not be afraid of the longing," she would say. "It is what brought you here. It is what will carry you home. I spent so many years fighting it, thinking it was my enemy. Now I know it was my truest friend, the only one who refused to let me settle for less than I was meant for." This story shows us how to hold the feeling of something missing. May had carried her restlessness as a burden, a secret shame. The old woman showed her it was a gift. The same longing that had caused her pain was also the seed of her awakening. Zen teaches that the search begins with dissatisfaction, not the petty complaints of a restless mind, but the deep recognition that ordinary life is not touching what truly matters. This recognition is not ingratitude. It is clarity. It is the soul's refusal to settle for less than it is capable of receiving. The Buddha taught that suffering itself can become a teacher. The hollow place, the restlessness, the sense that something is missing, these are not punishments or mistakes. They are invitations. They are the first stirrings of a deeper life asking to be born. Buddhism shows us that awakening is not for special people. It is for anyone who feels the call. The very fact that you feel something is missing means you are ready to begin. You would not feel the absence if you were not already sensing the presence that is hidden beneath it. Let us explore another story that reveals more of this truth. In a monastery at the foot of a great mountain, there lived a young man named Kai who had come seeking answers. He had felt the hollow place all his life, the sense that something was missing that he could not name. When he heard about the monastery and its teachings, he knew he had to go. He left his family and his work and made the long journey, arriving at the gates with nothing but the clothes on his back and the questions in his heart. The head of the monastery, an old teacher named Master Udo, met with each new arrival personally. When Kai was brought before him, he looked at the young man for a long moment without speaking. "Why have you come?" he finally asked. Kai tried to find the right words. "I have always felt that something is missing. I have tried to be content with ordinary life, but I cannot. There is an emptiness in me that nothing fills. I thought perhaps here I could find what I am looking for." Master Udo nodded slowly. "And this emptiness, this feeling of something missing, how long have you carried it?" "As long as I can remember. Since I was a child." "Have you tried to make it go away?" "Many times. I have tried to ignore it, to distract myself, to convince myself I should be satisfied with what I have. Nothing works. It always returns." Master Udo smiled slightly. "Good." Kai was surprised. "Good. I thought the feeling was the problem. I thought I came here to be rid of it." "Many people think this," the old teacher said. They believe the goal is to finally feel complete, to fill the emptiness once and for all. But this is a misunderstanding. The emptiness you feel is not the problem. It is the doorway. He gestured for Kai to sit across from him on the simple mat. Let me ask you something. If you had never felt this emptiness, would you be here right now? Kai thought about this. No, I suppose not. I would still be at home, living an ordinary life. And are you glad you are here? Despite the difficulty of the journey, despite leaving everything familiar behind? Yes, Kai said without hesitation. Something in me knew I had to come. I could not ignore it any longer. That something is what brought you here. That feeling of emptiness, of something missing, was your truest guide. It refused to let you settle for a life that was not fully alive. It kept asking its question until you had no choice but to seek an answer. Master Udo picked up a small bell from the table beside him. He rang it once, and the clear tone hung in the air. This bell is empty inside. If it were solid, it could not ring. The emptiness is what allows the sound to be born. He set the bell down gently. Your emptiness is the same. It is not a lack. It is a capacity, a readiness, a space in which something new can arise. Kai felt something loosen in his chest. All his life he had treated the empty feeling as his enemy, as proof that something was wrong with him. Now this teacher was telling him it was his greatest ally. But it is painful, Kai said. The feeling of something missing causes suffering. Yes, Master Udo agreed. The pain is real. But consider what the pain is telling you. It is saying that you are not meant for half a life. It is saying that something in you knows there is more. The pain is not punishment. It is guidance. It hurts because you are trying to live in a way that is too small for who you really are. He looked at Kai with eyes that seemed to see right through him. Many people feel what you feel but run from it. They fill their lives with distractions. They stay so busy they never have to face the emptiness. They live their whole lives this way, never asking the questions that matter, never following where the longing leads. He leaned forward slightly. You did not run. You came here. You followed the emptiness instead of fleeing from it. This takes courage. Not everyone has this courage. The very thing that has caused you suffering is also what has brought you to this moment. It is your teacher. It has been teaching you all along. Kai sat in silence, absorbing what he had heard. The empty feeling was still there in his chest, but it felt different now. Less like a wound and more like an opening. Less like something was wrong and more like something was possible. What do I do now? He asked. You begin, Master Udo said simply. You sit with the questions you have brought. You stop running from the emptiness and start listening to it. You practice being present, being still, letting whatever wants to arise, arise. The path will unfold. You do not need to know where it leads. You only need to take the next step. He rang the bell once more, signaling the end of their meeting. The feeling that brought you here will continue to guide you. It is not separate from the awakening you seek. It is the first movement of that awakening. Trust it. It knows the way even when you do not. Kai bowed and left the room. He did not feel fixed or complete. The emptiness was still there, but he carried it differently now. He understood that it was not his enemy but his companion. The very thing he had tried so hard to escape was what had led him home. In the weeks that followed, Kai began his training at the monastery. He sat in meditation, struggling with his restless mind. He worked in the gardens, learning the patience of plants. He studied with the other monks, listening to teachings that sometimes confused him and sometimes struck him like lightning. Through it all, the emptiness remained. But he was learning to be with it differently. Instead of trying to fill it or flee from it, he would sit with it. He would feel its texture, its weight, its strange spaciousness. He began to understand what Master Udo had meant about the empty bell. The emptiness was not a lack. It was a capacity for something he had not yet learned to receive. One evening, sitting in meditation as the sun set behind the mountain, Kai felt the emptiness more intensely than ever. For a moment, he wanted to run. He wanted to go back to his old life, where he could distract himself, keep busy, avoid this uncomfortable presence. But instead, he stayed. He breathed. He let the emptiness be exactly as large and as uncomfortable as it was. And in that allowing, something subtle shifted. The emptiness did not go away, but it was no longer against him. It was simply there, like the sky is there, holding everything without needing to be anything other than what it is. He understood then what his teacher had been pointing toward. The emptiness was not the opposite of fullness. It was the space in which fullness could arise. By fighting it, he had been fighting himself. By accepting it, he had come home. In the years of practice that followed, Kai returned often to what Master Udo had taught him. When the emptiness arose, he did not fight it. He let it speak. He let it guide his attention toward what mattered. He discovered that the feeling of something missing was not a sign that he was broken. It was a sign that he was alive, fully, deeply alive in a way that refused to settle for less than truth. And when new students arrived at the monastery, feeling the same emptiness Kai had felt, carrying the same shame and confusion he had carried, he would share what his teacher had shared with him. The longing that brought you here is precious. Do not try to be rid of it. It is your own heart, calling you toward itself. It is the first step on a path that leads to everything. This story shows us the deep value of the search itself. Kai arrived at the monastery hoping to be freed from his emptiness. Instead, he was taught to honor it. The very feeling he had wanted to escape became the foundation of his practice. Zen teaches that we cannot skip the search. We cannot bypass the longing, the restlessness, the sense that something is missing. These are not obstacles on the path. They are the path. They are what shake us awake, what refuse to let us settle, what keep asking the questions that lead us home. The Buddha spent years searching before he sat beneath the Bodhi tree. Those years were not wasted. They prepared him. They showed him what did not work. They deepened his readiness for what would finally come. Without the searching, there would have been no awakening. Buddhism shows us that everything belongs. The hollow place, the restlessness, the years of seeking, even the frustration and despair that sometimes accompany the search. All of it is part of the journey. All of it is leading somewhere, even when we cannot see where. The path is not separate from the pathlessness. The finding is hidden in the seeking. What we are looking for is looking through our eyes. Tonight, you have heard many teachings about the search. You have heard that what you seek is already here. You have heard that stopping is sometimes more powerful than seeking. These teachings are true. And yet, here you are, still feeling what you feel, still carrying what you carry. This too is perfect. You do not need to have arrived anywhere by the end of tonight. You do not need to feel complete or healed or finished. The search does not end with a single night of listening. It unfolds over time, through countless moments of presence and countless forgettings and returnings. What matters is that you have begun. What matters is that you are listening. As we come to the end of our exploration tonight, let this truth settle into you. Whatever brought you here, whatever longing or restlessness led you to these words, it is not a mistake. It is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is the most right thing about you. It is your own wisdom, stirring from sleep, reaching toward the light. As we come to the end of our time together tonight, let yourself settle even more deeply into rest. We have explored the feeling of something missing, that quiet ache that visits us in still moments. We have seen how we search outward for what can only be found within. We have felt the weight of wanting and discovered how seeking itself can become the obstacle. We have found the courage to stop and glimpse the truth that we are already whole, and we have honored the search itself. The restlessness that brought you here tonight is not your enemy. It is the first stirring of awakening, your own wisdom calling you toward home. You do not need to remember all of this. The stories and teachings have done their work, settling into you like seeds in quiet earth. In their own time, in their own way, they will grow. For now, there is nothing more to do. The thinking mind has heard what it needed to hear. It can rest now. Let it rest. Let the thoughts come and go like clouds passing through an empty sky. You do not need to follow them. You do not need to push them away. Simply let them be, and let yourself be. Your breath continues on its own. Your heart beats without your direction. Life is living itself through you, as it always has. You can trust this. You can rest in this. The hollow place may still be there, and that is fine. It is not a problem to be solved tonight. It is a companion on a journey that continues long after these words have faded. For now, simply rest. Simply be. You are exactly where you need to be. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Sleepy Monk.